Hello and welcome to the Seahawks Syndicate. We got our four crew back in the house, the four horsemen, not of the apocalypse, but the Seapocalypse. That's right. We got Dan, my man, out here from Seahawks Forever, Bryce Coots here from the Hawks Eye, and of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Mookie, out there coming back in from Field Goals, all checking in, all ready to give us some of their perspective as we've gone through the first heater of the week of free agency and all that has occurred within on in it. We got a lot of ground to cover tonight, folks, so we are going to just bounce back in. But gentlemen, how are we doing this evening?
Doing great. I mean, we've got new players.
We got something to talk about.
That's right.
We got something.
John really came through for us today. John knew the syndicate was tonight. He knew there wasn't a lot to talk about, and he came through for us.
Well, that's right. And I guess we were going to talk about the coach. Let's flip this a little quickly. This one. We've got a couple signings today. We've got a lot of cover on this, what they've done in free agency, but today kind of some lower end signings. Let's start out with you on this, Bryce. Give us a quick recap on on these players, and then just like the signing or what I expected, or this is kind of too light.
I like what they're doing. Like you've re-signed, key pieces that you needed to in Shaheed and in Josh Jobe. You've brought back Brandon Peely, which is a nice depth piece. Like, and some of the guys they brought in today, especially, with the safety and Rodney Thomas that they brought in, you're bringing in good depth pieces. DeAnthony Bell is back, who we all liked last year and unfortunately got sniped there near the end of the year on the practice squad. Emmanuel Wilson, the running back, I think will be an interesting component to that running back room. And he's shown some, bright spots, I would say, at points, with Green Bay last year. But I do still expect them to add to that position group. I look at him as more of a hedge against, hey, is Kenny McIntosh going to be okay and come back and produce? I don't look at Emmanuel Wilson and go, yeah, that's our next running back that's going to be toting the rock a whole bunch in Zach Charbonnet's absence. I think of him as a, hey, come and improve what you can do. If you are good enough, then we'll look at getting you a new contract in the new year. For me, I expected an offseason like this from Seattle. I didn't expect them to swing for the fences necessarily because they have so much good nucleus and talent here. They were going to lose some of it. How do you kind of rebuild those cupboards that you've kind of got lacking in the depth department without breaking the bank to do it? And I think John Schneider and the Seahawks have done a good job of that. Now we see what they do going forward.
Mookie, are you feeling these moves yourself? And which one do you kind of like of what we've seen from down the line today? We've got a couple safeties, running back, hell, even maybe more at this pace today, the way it's going.
Yeah, I am begging the Seahawks to please, for the duration that we record, no more moves. I think Field Goals might have to like expand the number of articles we can put on a front page at this rate. But I'm fine with these moves. Like Rodney Thomas, I vaguely remembered him for the first couple of years of the Colts. And he kind of sort of maybe changed the trajectory of the Seahawks franchise inadvertently because when the Colts beat the Broncos in that legendarily bad Thursday night football game, he got his first career interception off Russ. And then at the end of the year, Houston against Indianapolis, he completely whiffs on an interception that would have ended the game. And then the Texans would have had the number one pick in the draft, and Seattle would have been, I believe, 4 instead of 5. So who knows if that would have been the difference between them taking Witherspoon and not. So Rodney Thomas actually has some loose links to the Seahawks just from his rookie year with Indianapolis. But it'll be interesting to see if he has any competition with Ty Okada for that other starting safety spot. I know Corbin Smith has sort of speculated that because Seattle doesn't have a lot of corners on the roster right now, and he did play corner in college at Yale, could he potentially move to cornerback and play for a role there? Special teams, I think, is kind of the theme for several of these signings. Rodney Thomas, even though he lost his starting job in Indy, regular special teamer there. You bring back DeAnthony Bell. Again, good depth piece at safety, but his special teams is where he really shined. I hope he gets a Super Bowl ring because obviously they weren't intending for him to get claimed off waivers the last time they waived him. And he goes to Carolina and they lose. He could have had a ring here, at least been a part of the celebration. So I'm cool with DeAnthony being back. And then as far as the Emmanuel Wilson signing, what I like most about it is not having to give up a comp pick. So like if he's like another Rachaad White type, but you don't have to pay Rachaad White money, the money that the Commanders presumably gave Rachaad White and probably lose a comp pick. I'm cool with that. I think that Emmanuel Wilson's an all right back. Nothing, spectacular. He's certainly not a speedster by any means, but he runs good downhill, physical back. I say downhill. He had a minus 18-yard run against Minnesota that was the butt of jokes. But generally speaking, when it's the goal line, I noticed that he can fight through tackles. He can dive forward and kind of get the easy yardage. So I think that Wilson is just going to be in the mix. He's not going to be running back one. I think that's got to be made clear, and I expect Seattle to still work on that room moving forward. And the reason, by the way, I say Wilson isn't part of the comp pick is he was a restricted free agent and they didn't tender him in Green Bay. So restricted and exclusive rights, if they're not tendered, not part of the comp pick formula. So Seattle has added to the roster, don't have to give up any comp picks, so they're still +4 in that category heading into next year's draft. And that means they got a ton of draft capital as things stand for next year. I'm not paying attention to the 2027 draft really all that much, but 12 picks at the moment, even though several of them haven't been awarded yet, 12 picks at the moment does have an impact for what they could do as far as making a trade or two later on in this offseason and giving up some capital in 2027.
Dan, I haven't had a chance on these guys to really have much of the background to look at them. I think even Mookie sounds like a little more familiar with both these two guys, one of these guys at least, than I was come through this. They came out of some small schools, not a lot of film to look at them come out, late round picks. So they're a guy who's watching tape. I know you've already probably bounced into it a little bit here as you were hearing some of these signings with these guys. Have you been able to check out any tape with these guys that stands out to you in a unique way for this team as far as finding a role?
Yeah, oddly enough, I had Emmanuel Wilson had been suggested to me by a number of viewers over the last couple of days, ever since he was non-tendered. And so I was actually watching tape of him this morning, went to NFL Pro and just kind of locked it down and was watching a lot of what he did last year. And he got a couple opportunities when Josh Jacobs was injured. And I found it fascinating today, listening just an hour ago to John Schneider on his radio show talk about how he gives us something that we don't really have and haven't had in a while. I mean, this is a compact, stout ball of muscle. He is a hammer. And that's really what I was looking for. I've been all over Twitter the last couple of days saying, look, out of this veteran free agency period, however we go about doing it, I want a meat and potatoes running back. I mean, that's what would make me feel the best right now. And then we could look at the draft for someone with some more upside. Right. And we were all in Mobile together and we saw that this running back class is pretty good. It's not as deep as last year. There aren't going to be 33 running backs drafted like there were last year, but there's 10 to 12 guys that we can feel good about. So I was watching the tape this morning because I was intrigued and I thought, man, this is exactly what I think they need to add right now. He does not mess around. He is as north-south as it comes. Mookie said he's good in the short yardage stuff. You watch him in the red zone and he doesn't even try to find a hole. He just plows straight forward. He catches the ball remarkably well for a guy 5'10", 225 pounds. But yeah, Schneider even said today, he gives us something we don't have. And I think that's really, really important when you look at how the rest of the running back room is sort of set up, that this is a guy that just early downs, right? He's going to get you the tough yards and he's going to be good in the red zone. And then I just look at the big picture as a whole. And I know we'll probably get into like some of the fan reaction and some of the trepidation and fear out there that we're not doing more. We've added 14 players. And when I say added, I mean, look, when you have your own free agents, even if they're restricted or exclusive rights, they're not yours until they're yours, until you tender them and sign them. They've been able to lock up 14 players over the last 3 days, and they've only lost 4. And we universally all agree, and by we, I don't just mean us 4. I mean, all of you watching, 2 of them, I mean, Rick Woolen and Boye Mafe, we all thought they were leaving since what, September? So it's not, the sky isn't falling the way some people think. It's just they want big names. They want excitement. I did think Schneider would do something by now that we'd have to talk about, a more significant outside free agent. And maybe that move is yet to come at some point down the road. But the restraint, I think, makes sense given what you're showing on the screen right now, because it is not usual. It is not typical for a team to win a Super Bowl with the 3rd youngest roster in the league and then keep together almost the entire foundation. Usually those teams are aging. They have a bunch of guys that are going to walk. 13 out of 16 players on defense that played over 400 snaps last year coming back. 10 out of 10 on offense that played 700 snaps or more coming back. And the only one on offense not coming back is the running back position because they split carries. That's a good offseason. And we're only sitting here at March 12th with cap space, draft picks, and 500 free agents still out there yet to be signed.
Good points all the way around, Dan, and I can't do nothing but echo the exact same thing from my end of it, in that I think that this team, you've retained most of what was important to retain. It's not without some losses, but you still got that money in the bank. I don't want to prolong the talk on these guys today because some of them are flyers, some of them are giving you. I think on the Emmanuel Wilson thing, though, Dan did touch upon something that I want to just pivot quickly to you, Bryce, upon, and the X's and O's side of this, because this is where I thought McVay was very smart ahead of the curve. We get to these 4-man fronts in football with a lot of the nickel looks and cover 2 shell. And then with that, we also get these unique fronts that are a little bit typically stretched out unless teams go to base. And so what I thought the Rams did a good job of within this is they reinforced the beef in the middle, 1,000 pounds of beef in one off season, and then Kyron Williams downhill type running back. When you have a defensive line stretched out, Dan, and I have a hammer versus the skitterish jump around, make a bunch of moves, but I got a pure and utter hammer. And I think we all agree Zach's good. He's a good downhill. He can be a hammer at times. He's not a full on, he's kind of a combination of some things. What does it do to a defense, though, with this new fronts in the NFL, with this kind of back, as John Schneider said, like Dan said on his interview, that we haven't had this kind of guy, to John's point on this?
It certainly changes things because now, one, you don't necessarily have to do as much of splitting of carries as you would otherwise. Like, to your point, Brandon, last year we saw split carries for K9 because duration on health, right? Can he stay actually healthy? And they were so contrastually different in their styles of running. Zach in that equation could be more of the hammer. You bring in an Emmanuel Wilson or back of that type where they're able, like a Kyron Williams type, where they've got some speed to them, but they can also hit you like a ton of bricks. Well, now it changes how teams have to play. Do they beef up their linebackers like in division? Do the Rams, do the 49ers go, hey, you know what? We have to add more size inside because they've got this power back that can run through the middle and still break it for 30 or 40 yards down the sideline and really add that kind of explosion to it. As an offensive play caller, it's great because now I sit there and go, cool, I don't have to scheme my run game as much. I can just go, okay, this guy's going to get 20 carries in this game. Awesome. I know that he can run all 20 different things. We can run the outside zone, but we can now also bring him in and have him hammer it between the tackles. And you've seen that with what McVay's been doing with his running backs and with that offensive line. When they had Todd Gurley wasn't really a power runner. Like he was a bigger back, but he really excelled in that outside zone, right? Let him get the edge, turn it and go, which is what we saw with K9. When they moved to Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, you saw guys that could, we can do that, but we can also go between the tackles in your inside zone, your GT counters, your power, your trap. And that really revolutionized this offense for McVay. And what McVay's been able to kind of, I think, take a step with it is, hey, we can go in between the tackles. We can run gap power schemes and we can run outside zone well. We're more multiple than we used to be. And even the 49ers have done it to an extent with McCaffrey, right? But they, again, don't trust the durability factor of McCaffrey. So they had Brian Robinson Jr. in behind last year. This really does, and to Schneider's point, it does give you something. Like the last back that I would say fit this description was Thomas Rawls. Thomas Rawls was our last back that was kind of little muscle kind of guy that can burst through and run in between the tackles and also take it off the edge and scoot up the sidelines for, a 30, 40-yard run and be explosive that way. Outside of that, Chris Carson was big. Rashad Penny were big. They weren't a smaller back that's 5'11", 200 pounds that could hit you like a ton of bricks and also run away from you.
And Mike Davis was another guy that someone mentioned to me today too. I thought it was kind of a little bit of a similar comp.
Yeah, Mike Davis is one of my all-time favorites. Here for a very short period of time, running backs. And I also want to thank Bryce for noting I did not know Rachaad White only signed for $2 million. So that's not going to be a comp pick for loss for Washington either. It doesn't matter because they signed like 1 billion free agents, so they don't have to worry about that next year. But I guess they were monitoring Rachaad White, but Emmanuel Wilson's kind of like another option for them who's sort of similar. I mean, neither Rachaad nor Wilson is known as this. You're not going to see the huge runs like K9 was capable of, but in terms of being able to fall forward, being able to plow through defenders, being able to at least be good in short yardage, I think Wilson will provide that. And he's got less tread on those tires because he didn't play much in his first year. And he was still a backup in years 2 and 3. So like 260 something carries over 3 years. He's 26 years old. These should be his lean years.
Yeah, it seems like a little bit mookie that maybe they went for the little bit more measurable upside for what you get with Wilson versus the floor of the third down back that you would have gotten in Rashad if the price was all equivalent. Seems like they're sort of saying that a little bit because you could have easily beaten out that offer unless you just didn't want to come here, being Rashad White. But not a bad consolation prize on that side of it. Fellas, we did get a little bit of sub-breaking news on this out the rip here with the coaching staff getting finalized just before the start of going live today. So when I look at this now very massive coaching staff, look at the massive coaching staff on that team. Would love to hear your thoughts, Dan, on what you kind of take away and taking a look at some of these roles that are being served and how this thing has all fitted out, able to retain a lot of guys despite the fact we lost Kubiak off the staff, which was good. What are your takeaways here off looking at this coaching staff?
Yeah, my first takeaway is that I was told by many, many Raiders fans that we were going to lose our entire offensive coaching staff when they hired Clint Kubiak, that we were going to lose John Benton and Jake Peets and Justin Out. They were all going to go. They're going to raid our coaching staff. So I kid. I think the fact that all we lost was Andrew Janocko and Clint Kubiak and Rick Dennison, who I honestly I didn't really count him in a way, right? He was kind of an extra coach that kind of gave him extra responsibilities. I always kind of felt like he just sat in an office somewhere and answered questions when people had them. That's kind of what I thought Rick Dennison's role was. But I think the continuity on this coaching staff might be one of the most important storylines moving forward, right? We see this Super Bowl hangover that we keep hearing about, and we see regression from these teams sometimes, and a lot of it's because their roster not only gets rated, but so does their coaching staff. And so I think that we've been able to keep all the key players and keep all that continuity is important. What I'm fascinated the most about, I'd be interested to hear Bryce's thoughts on this as well, is what they did with the quarterback coaching position, because that was Andrew Janocko's sole responsibility last year. This year, it looks like they've divided it between Tyson Prince and Jake Peets. Prince is interesting to me. He helped coach wide receivers last year, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. He's another one of the guys on this staff that seems to be sort of an up-and-coming mind. And then you add Daniel Stern, the young wonderkind, as he's been described, that we kind of poached from the Ravens as a pass game strategist. And look, we talked about this a couple of months ago when we all knew we were going to lose Clint Kubiak. We lived through, almost 15 years of Pete Carroll being the head coach, and we never had an offensive coordinator get hired elsewhere as a head coach or get a promotion anywhere. And it looks like, they interviewed 4 guys for the job internally before hiring Brian Fleury. It looks like they're stacking an offensive staff of young minds that we might turn out to be a pipeline for getting rated for play calling OCs and even head coaches in the future. It's an impressive staff.
It's one way, Bryce, to overcome this is you just have a big stack. So if they take one, you got one right behind them, you can fit in. Next man up.
Yeah, no, you really did. And I think what you've done is you've made this so deep with, you've got Brian Fleury, you've got Justin Outen now, you've got Jake Peets still, and then you got Daniel Stern, who you've really kind of been able to layer at the very bottom of that group in a lot of ways and kind of be like, hey, we're going to wait and see. If, Brian Fleury goes after next year, let's hope it's a 2-year deal at least, and he stays for 2. Then you've got potentially Outen or Peets might be ready at that point. Or, then you turn maybe till Daniel Stern and go, hey, it's your turn to do it. Even though he's a pass game strategist, we've seen guys make that jump in the past before. The quarterback thing, I think, is at least from what I look at that with having the role split, is Jake Peets has a history of doing it in the past. I think this is an opportunity for Tyson Prince to learn a little bit under Jake Peets. So if Jake Peets does, this is, again, I think Mike McDonald being smart and hedging against the fact he could lose Peets and Outen next year. Okay, I don't have to get a brand new quarterback coach. I can have a guy that trained under Janocko, that's now trained under Peets, and then can assume that role next year. You could look at it this way. Say next year Jake Peets does leave Seattle after the season. You could have it where Daniel Stern becomes your pass game coordinator and Tyson Price your quarterback coach. There's the experience. There's your layering of this coaching staff. And I think it's fascinating even on the defensive side now, right? You got Zachary Orr here as the inside linebackers coach. You weren't losing any of the coaches on that defensive side of the ball. I do think Durday's probably gone next year, as I do Carl Scott. I think both of those guys will get whether DC jobs, calling plays somewhere else, or in Durday's case, a head coaching job. So again, Mike's done a good job of layering in behind that. He seems to truly be a guy that likes to think 2-3 moves ahead of what is actually coming down the pipe.
He does indeed. Mookie, when you look at the offensive coaches you're able to retain outside of Benton, which is too easy an answer for me to let you have, who is the most important coach to have retained off of that staff that you could have lost to Kubiak?
I might be inclined to say Alton, just because of the change in the run game success after he became sort of the pseudo running backs coach. I think he split time with somebody else whose name escapes me. After Polamalu went. And I feel like Alton at least provides some continuity there as far as being a run game coordinator. You lose Kenneth Walker, but you don't lose your run game coordinator. So the hope is that they can still have a functional run game, even if it's less explosive, at least have it be a little more consistent, because as great as the end of the season was, as a whole, it's hard to argue that that was a consistently good rushing attack. So hopefully next year, with Benton still as the offensive line coach and then Alton handling things as a run game coordinator, we get to see a little more consistency, especially with the fact that the offensive line, barring any change at right guard, really, is going to be the same group. And how often have we ever said that, where the Seahawks offensive line has got continuity, but for good reason? Like, continuity in itself is not always good. Like, would you really want to continue a Jamarcus Webb, Bradley Sowell offensive line into the following year? Probably not. But
I don't know. Year 2 of that, Mookie. Year 2 of that was going to be fire.
I'm pretty sure year 2 of that would have gotten a lot of people fired. But yeah, so I think that the fact that they didn't lose as many people as could have been feared on the offensive side of the ball was important to me. And I also mentioned out because don't forget, Kubiak tried to get him to Vegas, and the Seahawks, as was their right, blocked that move because it was a lateral move. So for the Raiders fans, I know they've been going after Dan for so long before their staff got finalized. All you got was Dennison and Janoko, but that's it. I mean, of course you got Kubiak, but in terms of like everybody below Kubiak, not that many people. It wasn't just going to be a full-on free-for-all shopping spree and opening the cabinet, taking whatever you want from the Seahawks coaching staff. So I like that most of this staff is here, and that Thomas Hammock is a well-respected running backs coach as a replacement for Polamalu. So that, to me, that's a positive. Daniel Stern, again, highly regarded. He's going to be part of this team as a strategist, not a specialist, not a coordinator, but as a strategist. And I just want to note on the defensive side of the ball, it seems like what we've seen with a slight tweak with Kirk Olivadotti is now he's no longer a linebackers coach. He's just senior defensive assistant. So that means Josh Bynes moves to outside linebackers coach and Zach Orr as inside linebackers coach. And with Dirty possibly being a head coach candidate next year, like let's say Dirty ends up getting a head coaching job, you already have somebody with defensive coordinator experience on the staff. Did it go well in Baltimore? No, but Baltimore is also not as talented as they were a couple of years ago, and there were injuries there. So as you've also alluded to, it's that not continuity, but it's that stacking in areas where you might end up losing depth. So the depth is more than just the roster of the players. It's also the roster you got with the coaching staff.
And you can see it's purposeful in their approach here, and that they're trying to do it not just by happenstance it's happening, but I lost my guys here. Hold on here. There we go. Not just by happenstance, but by the fact that they've tried to set this up. To Mike's credit on this one, I got a combination question. We're going to go with you on this, guys, and we'll move this around a little bit. So I'm going to start with Bryce on this one, and the hope here's I want a little bit of your initial thoughts on free agency on the whole with Seahawks here, but let's pivot that as well because all of you guys get feedback, and I want to see if this is consistent with some of what I'm getting. Not that it's everybody saying this, but there's a loud contingent on this that I'm hearing of things on this, but I don't want to lay the bait on this one. I just want you to respond. But Bryce, early thoughts on free agency, and then what you're kind of getting back from the feedback and hearing from the fans here on Seattle's approach here so far.
So my opinion on free agency is I actually have been I've liked it. I haven't been frustrated and upset that they haven't really done anything or done anything exciting that's, make a big splash or anything like that. We're talking about a team that just won the Super Bowl. Teams that are good, that want to stay in their window, do not go and be reckless with any sort of funds. They usually try and keep that stuff reserved. So if we get to the trade deadline and there are injuries and stuff that we all know that happens in a football season, they have that opportunity to make an adjustment at that point and really still put themselves in a position at the end of the year to have an opportunity to be in the big game. The thing I've been getting a lot of, though, is why aren't they doing anything? You know, the meme of the stick person trying to poke something. Like, why are you not doing anything? Do something, act. Like, you know, that little kid that's impatient. It's one of those things where I look at what I'm looking at John Schneider doing with the amount of comp picks he's going to get in 2027, which we all have heard, and I already probably have started to look at a little bit of some of the players that will be available in that class, is going to be a very loaded class, not just at the quarterback position, but at a whole bunch of positions.
Mm-hmm.
It also affords you the ability, once this free agency period happens and you know what your comp picks are going to be, to potentially use those at a trade after the draft if you still feel you're insufficient in what you have on your roster. Say they come out of the draft and they don't get a Mike Washington or a running back, or, you know, any of these other players that are potentially there, and they go, hey, we want to go get Devin A-Chain out of Miami. Well, now they have a little bit of capital to go do that in a trade situation. It's, for me, I get why the average fan or the fan that's really passionate wants to see their team do something, because they see all these other teams doing things. But at the end of the day, all those other teams are trying to be what you were last year. And if one thing holds true, and it seems to hold true all the time, teams that make big splashes and spend a whole boatload of money in free agency don't tend to end up being where we were at the end of last year with the Lombardi in our hand, celebrating it on a rival's home field.
Dan, what have you been kind of getting on that same front of things, and your thoughts as well?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Look, I have fandom inside me too. I get excited about big moves and big names. We've talked about Max Crosby here for months, and you know, you wake up during free agency Monday, Tuesday. I know, especially Monday, I was up early and couldn't wait for the clock to change. It was scrolling all day. And you hope to see something that surprises you. You hope to see something you're not expecting, right? Oh, geez. But that isn't the smart way for this team to move forward. And I understand that. And I think they're in a unique position because, as I said at the top, it's not often that you come off a Super Bowl with such a young roster and are able to retain so much of your core. And I think too much emotional energy has been spent lamenting the four that got away. I understand it from an emotional standpoint because we get attached to these players, right? Sports means something to us. But from a pragmatic standpoint, and from a football, like a roster building standpoint, every single year when you're a good team, you're going to lose players that sting a little bit. You're going to have to make some tough decisions and allow players to leave every year that are going to sting a little bit in order to keep this thing running. And what's remarkable about the situation for John Schneider is he's seen the other side of it. He's won a Super Bowl and then gone out and tried to make the big move to take us to the next level and dominate. And that didn't work well, right? The adrenaline, the testosterone approach to free agency didn't work out great. And not necessarily with free agency, but with trades and going out and trying to get big name players. And so I think this philosophy is more sustainable. I think it's really smart. I think they're looking 2 and 3 years ahead, and everyone just needs to relax. This is the best in the sport. He's the best on the planet at doing what he does. And if he hasn't proven that by now, I don't know what to tell you. It's going to be fun. And I think today is one of those reminders of that. We all woke up today thinking, well, we still need this and we still need this, and feel a lot better if we just had one more of these. And look at the work he's doing. This is where Schneider really shines. Now he goes to work. And I think from this point forward, fans are going to love what he does.
Mookie, along the same lines, but I do want to kind of know from you too, if you are hearing a similar feedback and what you're seeing in the comment section out there in Field Goals. Is it surprising to you that, and again, it's not a majority, but both of these two guys are hearing what I'm hearing, which we're hearing it. Isn't it kind of surprising to you that there's a little bit of this lack of faith to John and how the outlook is by some in this fan base, being that you did just come off of Super Bowl victory that you won comfortably?
I think the fan base has got a little bit of memory loss going on because, like, this isn't our first go around with the Seahawks having not a whole lot of involvement the first week of free agency. And this is, honestly speaking, not one of the stronger free agent classes of recent memory. And then just in general, Schneider has been one to do a lot of short-term deals for not a lot of money. Now, it was different in years past because those were less talented teams and they were just doing these one-year stopgap signings with veterans who weren't very good and they weren't solving a problem. these are more like, signings for depth. Emmanuel Wilson, I still think, is more of depth than a bona fide starter. Like Rodney Thomas, depth because Kobe Bryant's gone. You've got Ty Okada as your presumptive next starter. And if he doesn't win the starting job, Rodney Thomas also has got 2 years worth of starting experience as a safety. So they don't have a ton of needs. Now, I think that if it were up to me, I would have been a little more aggressive as far as replacing Walker in free agency with somebody like a Tyler Algier, and then getting somebody in the draft. But I still believe they'll draft somebody. They'll draft a running back. They've got a lot of guys as is right now with Charbonnet on the mend, and Schneider was coy about it. He's not giving a timetable for a return, but I wouldn't be so presumptive into thinking Charbonnet's gone until like November or anything. So we still gotta figure that bit out to determine how much they really want to push at the running back position. But I guess a lot of the concern is because of what the Rams did. The Rams came out swinging. They trade for McDuffie and extend him, and then they signed Jalen Watson from Kansas City. And it's like, oh boy, here, and they extended Cam Curl. So you're looking, oh boy, here come the Rams. We got to respond and do all this and that. There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee Matthew Stafford's going to have another MVP level season. Like he's an aged quarterback. He's still a brilliant quarterback, but like he hurts his back again or something, or like he shows signs that he's declining. And that Rams team is not going to be nearly as fearsome. I'm fine with the way free agency has gone so far. And I think part of it is because of the guys they kept. And by that, I mean the Shaheed signing. We weren't really expecting that when we were here last week. And not only did he resign, but I think the contract is pretty reasonable for a guy who could be your second wide receiver over Kupp this year. It means that you're not creating another need in the draft, or not creating another need where you have to sign another receiver in free agency to replace Shaheed. Instead, it's really just running back, another corner, and edge. And, you could do a lot worse than that. We're kind of assuming Tank Lawrence is going to play. He's not going to retire. Jonathan Hankins was on Brock and Salk this morning, kind of calming everybody down because he's been buds with him. Again, the Seahawks are in a good spot because they have so many guys under contract, not just for this year, but for multiple seasons. So like everybody just simmer down, y'all. And I would say wait until April 27th or whenever the draft ends, the Monday after the draft. The comp pick game is over for everybody, and you might see this second wave. And I think you're going to see it league-wide too, because the Jaguars GM, I forgot his name, is Gladstone?
Yeah.
Okay, so
he just came out and said it today.
Just said it. Like, yeah, we want those comp picks for next year. Yeah. So if a lot of teams are going to do that, then you might see a lot of the free agents right now on March 12th still be unsigned on April 27th. So there's still going to be some room to maneuver in due time.
Amen. Amen. There will be. I know I said we're going to touch on this subject a little bit later on, but I'm more interested to want to kind of get your guys' thoughts with it, because I've got some thoughts too with it, and I want to kind of make sure I want to get us onto the same page with it, or hopefully maybe we all can come to some kind of close conclusion to this. Now, Dan, somebody came in my chat earlier today when I was live streaming and said, well, they've came out and said this, there's no way he's available anymore. And I don't know if that's true on it. People sometimes paint what people say, but the Crosby deal, of course, is back potentially in play now. The Baltimore Ravens, you guys know the story. Everyone knows out there. I want us to first start from the same page on this. Number one, there's nothing outside that's wonky on the need that they found. I don't care if they got a country worth of doctors to take a look at it all at the same time. This is obviously them pivoting to Trey Hendrickson. Nobody after meniscus surgery a month and a half is going to run a clean medical evaluation. Yeah. So let's just start from the first place. And nobody's like, well, I mean, they didn't see anything. So yeah, is there some risk on the knee? Sure, there's some risk on the knee. But let's look at this deal for it hasn't changed the parameters of the deal itself in the respect of, aside from the value's dropped. It's no longer 2 first-round picks. So Dan, let's start with you on this, on your thoughts and where you're at on kind of the Crosby thing and understanding what we've done in free agency now through the first wave. What do you think about where we're standing on this? Are you willing to make a move for it, knowing the price is not going to now bake into that future first-round pick here? Give me your thoughts.
First of all, I don't think anything happens for a while because the prices drop, because there's so much uncertainty around the league. And so I think it's smart now for the Raiders to hang on to him at least until they can provide some more optimistic updates about where he's at. And a couple more months into his rehab, which he was in the facility the next day at 6 a.m. doing after the trade fell apart, that then, teams can go do new MRIs or whatever and see a better picture. I will say this. I have over the last month or so have had a Seahawks source that has become increasingly trustworthy to me. And he reaches out to me. He offers things unprompted. He's not someone, he's connected to several teams around the league. He's not someone that I'm prodding for information. He told me 48 hours ago, there's no way in hell that Max Crosby is on the roster when the season starts. That bridge has been burned. They'll still find a way to move him. His tune changed today. He said that Crosby's announcement that he wants to stick around caught the organization by surprise. And they're now kind of trying to work through that. The remarkable thing here is that even after they had to put him back on the books unexpectedly, they still have cap space. They can carry Max Crosby on their roster. They didn't back out of any deals with other free agents. They can just leave him there. And so I do think it behooves them to hang on to him until there's a clear enough picture that that knee looks good long-term to alleviate some of the concerns that were brought up by the Ravens, legit or not, so that they can maximize his value, because this whole thing can change again. In 3 months, his knee looks great. He's running full speed and he has a clean MRI. Suddenly he's worth 2 first-round picks again. So maybe something happens closer to the draft.
Do you think there's a team that will give them 2 first-round picks down the line on this one still? Like that value goes down and then goes back up because he's not having an ACL surgery here. This is meniscus. You can look at this and you can understand that this isn't something that he's not reconstructing the whole knee from start to finish.
Meniscus often it involves cartilage, and that's a whole different ballgame. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. There could be arthritis involved. There could be some degenerative issues that crop up. And that's at least what the Ravens are kind of leaning on is their reason for being concerned about this, because the reports were he'd be fine for 2026 most likely, but then you wonder what comes after that. How many stories have we heard in the past like this, right? Like Tajay Spears when he was drafted a couple of years ago. He's got no ACL, right? We've heard that about some other guys in the past, and then they go on to play 10-year careers. And even John Schneider said it today on his show. He said every team has different ideas about what scans look like and what they might mean. He was kind of coy about it. I don't know about 2 first-round picks. I think given this, maybe you're talking about a second first-round pick being in play, but having it be conditional based on, vesting snaps and games played and things like that. I don't think it matters. I don't think he finishes his contract in Las Vegas. I think it's just a matter of whether they can find a taker before the season starts.
Yeah, so I guess I pose just down to you on this, Bryce, in the same respect, because I hear where Dan's coming from on this fully, but at the same point in time, I go, well, what is he going to say on the alternative? If Max comes out and says, this is horse crap, get me out of town, he just destroys his value all that much further. So, it's you play the game. This is the same thing with people telling me at the trade deadline last year that, well, Max hasn't requested a trade. It's like, yeah, but we came this close away from trading him. Mm-hmm. So on that front, I kind of wonder. And on the second front, I go, okay, the knee scans right now are showing something bad. He's had 8 surgeries. It ain't going to show something good when he can suddenly now pass a physical. It's still going to look degenerative light depending on where your medical staff stands. And so I kind of stand on both of those to myself, Bryce, and go, okay, I don't know that the value is going up, I guess. Do you buy into that being the case here, value, that his value can go up once he passes the medical? Are you willing to jump in the fray? And you didn't answer, Dan, by the way, whether or not you would be willing to jump in the fray outside of 2 first-round picks.
No.
So would you if you knew that was less?
No, I would not give up 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby.
No. If it's less than the 2 first-round picks, so if we're talking a first and a day 2 pick down the line, and
I'm still in on him. Yeah,
you're in. Okay, I wanted to make sure. That's why I wanted to get the clarity on that, Bryce.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't think there's a way a team's going to get 2 first-round picks from Max Crosby now, because the biggest issue with a meniscus injury is the fact there's no real solid, concrete, proven way to really repair it. Like, you can have the surgery. And the one thing, I have friends that have had meniscus injuries from football, and every couple of years you're going to get it cleaned out, getting it redone. It just never really ever goes back to what it was prior to the injury. So in the case of Max Crosby, to your point, Brandon, he's already had 8 surgeries. You're most likely probably going to get a first-round pick if he plays well in that first half of the season and he sticks around. You're probably going to get a first-round pick. It's not probably going to be a top-end pick, like a 15 or above. It's going to be a lower first-round pick, maybe another, and a player, which is what some of the teams were offering at this point. And for me, I would be willing to consider it. I'm not necessarily out on Max Crosby, but I also look at it and I go, okay, he's a game wrecker when he's healthy. How much are we going to get out of Max over the next couple of years where, say, in the 2027 edge class, there is a guy that you may identify that you really like that is 23. And yes, he may not instantly give you that impact, but you have a longer outlook of potentially having him be a top player in your scheme. And so, again, the whole thing, I'll say, it's all shenanigans. Like, Baltimore realized they wanted Trey Hendrickson because they could keep their first round pick. However, it's unfortunate. Yeah, bullshit. No. You guys realized you could get out of this before the league year started. You found your way. Oh, his knee's horrible. And like, basically, I've seen memes of the MRI scans where it's like, oh, look, his foot and leg don't even are attached anymore. That's why they got out of the deal. Like, come on, just be honest. Okay, we got out of this. We got cold feet. We didn't want to commit to a guy that we aren't sure about long term. And we can get our first round picks back and build our roster that way. From the Raiders' perspective, like Dan said, they get to keep a player that does love being a Raider. Like, that's one thing I think that's kind of in this whole story, I think is getting misguided or misrepresented. Max Crosby loves the Raiders, just like Derek Carr loves the Raiders. He isn't a fan of Tom Brady and Guerrero. That's the problem in this situation. If those two are not in this equation, Max is not asking to get out. That's the biggest problem the Raiders have. If they want to fix their organization, get rid of Tom Brady, get rid of Alex Guerrero, because it's no different than any other time someone's come into that organization from New England, or New England players or representative gone out elsewhere, like Josh McDaniels. They ruin organizations because they try and do things the way Bill Belichick does. It doesn't work, and now it's going to blow up in their face. I think Max Crosby plays half the season for the Raiders, and then someone comes calling and gives him a first-round pick at the trade deadline, and Max Crosby's playing somewhere else. I would do it if I view Seattle has an edge problem. If we go into this year, we get to that trade deadline, and Seattle's worse off than they were last year because Tank can't replicate what he did, which, again, I think that's one thing we got to take into consideration. Yes, Tank may come back, but I don't know if Tank's going to have the health that he had last year or the production necessarily that he did last year. I think last year was almost like a renaissance season for Lawrence.
Well, don't you have an edge problem then already? Then Boy is out the door. Uchenna is wildly inconsistent, and then you're not as confident by what you're saying that you're going to get DeMarcus Lawrence giving you back, replicating what you even got last year, which was as good as a year as it was, giving you just bare minimum enough really for the edge as far as pressure rates go at the very least.
Potentially, I look at it and I go, what the price they may ask for right now compared to what you may be able to get later on, it might suit you better is all I'm saying in this situation. And I agree. Like, that's the thing. Like, you could go there right now and be like, hey, we'll give you a first and a third in Uchenna Nwosu. And they may take that, but that may hurt you in a longer term sense because you still don't know what you're going to get with Max. I'd rather see Max come back, play a few games, and then go and potentially look at that option and be like, okay, hey, you know what? We really noticed we didn't get anything in the draft that really, we didn't get a Derek Moore. We didn't get one of these guys to help us out. Now let's go revisit this in week 3 or week 4, even before the trade deadline. Go, hey, okay, now let's make this deal. We've seen Max play a bit.
I think it's a completely fair point. And Mookie, I want to get your thoughts on this. I just want to add on top of this that I said back at the trade deadline that they need to make the move now because this is when you're maxing out your returns. That's proven out to be true. I looked like I was wrong for a moment there where they got a couple first round picks, but I was proven right on that. You would have gotten 2 1s at the trade deadline. I don't know how the Raiders looks at this situation and say 2 months down the line, we're going to get more with less teams having less money to spend. We're going to get more assets on that versus can I maximize my assets right now before the draft and getting that? And I logically say, yeah, the answer is they can, and they're not going to get more a couple months down the line. So I love your scenario, Bryce, but that scenario may not be on the table for us here as a presumptive. It is great, but if it isn't, Mookie, where are we standing on this?
Well, I just want to point out in the comment section, don't know whose stream it is, from Seahawk Daddy. I want the Seahawks. I want to offer the Raiders 3 firsts and JSN for Crosby and then pull it back at the last minute. That would be like that's like, Lucy holding the football for Charlie Brown, but a more extreme version of that. So what the Ravens did was not illegal, at least to our knowledge. It's kind of crummy the way it happened.
It's the old you're not wrong, you're just an asshole. It's that
exactly.
That's what we're going for here. It certainly made things a little more entertaining for us because now we can get back to the Max Crosby, could he be a Seahawk discourse. I think that ultimately, if he gets moved, there will be another team like, say, Chicago, if they've got the cap space. I mean, they've certainly moved off from quite a few guys that would be interested in getting Crosby because they just don't really have a good edge rusher right now that you could really depend on. But I don't rule out the possibility that the Seahawks try and make a swing at a pass rusher. If it's not Crosby, I think it would be Grenard. And Grenard is at least, he's got his own injury thing, but not nearly to the point where we're worried that his shoulder's going to fall off. So like Grenard might not be as good as Crosby historically, but I doubt he costs a first-round pick. You could give up a day 2 pick. You could really kind of, as mentioned earlier, that's where all these 2027 picks that you have might play a role in any trades that you want to make. No doubt in my mind, Crosby is a super talent, and Pete Carroll ended up being right as far as shutting Crosby down. He must have said legit in the locker room, and that must have been the sign that Crosby cannot play another game. But I just think that if Seattle hadn't won the Super Bowl, there would probably be even more of a demand to get Crosby. Like, man, didn't win the Super Bowl, is probably that lack of a pass rush against the Rams. Stafford barely got touched. We need to make this trade to take us over the top. Well, they won the Super Bowl, and the only pass rusher they've lost for now is Boye Mafe, who was fourth in the rotation, if we're being honest. His snap counts dropped once DeMarcus Lawrence got signed and once Chenna was healthy. Now, I think they're going to keep Chenna because even though he might not be the most standout pass rusher, I know that cap hit's now like third highest. Like, he's still a very valuable run defender. So if they can keep Tank, if they can keep Chenna, Derek Hall can hopefully have a breakout year where he's got more than 2 sacks on his ledger. That fourth guy is really all that Seattle has to worry about. I guess one factor here would be is if they trade for Crosby or if they trade for Grenard, would Chenna essentially be a part of the deal? That's kind of like the one thing that I'm thinking about. Like, hey, here's this expiring contract of a guy who's been good. He just came off a pretty healthy season, and we can upgrade from Chenna. And in my opinion, Crosby is still a very underrated run defender. But I think that Schneider's going to be sniffing around for sure. He's going to keep his finger on the pulse as far as Crosby. He's not going to cost 2 firsts again, just because of what went down. And I believe Crosby still gets moved. Will he get moved during the draft or close to it? I think that's actually more likely than him getting moved during the season and being a November trade deadline, because we rarely see those types of mega deals in November.
True enough. I do think Grenard wouldn't cost you Chenna. Chenna doesn't go because that's part of a cap relief move for them moving Grenard. But let's get a yes or no on this.
Yep.
And I'm going to make this uncomfortable for you guys. You don't get to do I want the fun market prices here. I don't have to bleed a little bit because you're all saying kind of, tacit yeses. I'm getting a lot of like milk toast yeses, some lukewarm yeses.
Give it to us.
It's going to cost you a first-round pick in this year's draft. It is going to cost you next year's second-round pick and Uchenna Nwosu to go get Max Crosby right now. Do you guys do it?
I'm a no.
No, I think it'd have to be a little stronger than that.
Fair enough. I just want to know where you guys stood on that.
Where do you stand on it, Brandon?
I stand a yes on that. I think that we get to a point of overvaluing draft picks just a little bit too much. And while I know that the history of trading draft picks hasn't always worked with first round picks with John, I think you can unpack each of those moves and understand why they didn't necessarily look really good even on the surface of making the move for them. He changes the nature of this defense. He puts you in a place that you can get to a potentially all-time type defense as far as the upside goes on it. I do think you got an edge problem. I think people really gravitate to these. People are clinging to the pressure numbers like they're a sacred child because that's all you got when it comes off the edge. That's all you got to hang on. That's it. And when you look around right now, there's been not much in free agency. And maybe you can go get some vets, but Khalil Mack just went for almost $20 million on a 1-year deal. That kind of guy's kind of off the board, and they're going to keep going faster. And I'm open to Grenard. It ain't Crosby or bust, and it could be another player down the line. I'm not going to cry if he goes somewhere else, but I'm also not going to shy away from what is going to be a late second round pick. And I think a lot of us have gotten caught up in this first round thing, calling it a first rounder. Is it really?
No, not in this draft.
In this draft?
No, I've been trying to tell people. I took so much. I got death threat. No, that's not true. I got the Twitter equivalent of death threats when I suggested that the Seahawks take Jadarian Price at 32 in a recent mock draft. It's just insane. And I tried to make that exact same argument. This is such a weak draft class overall. And everyone agrees. It's not worthless. It's not terrible. You can find players, but it's weaker than we've seen in the past 5-6 years. It's weaker than we're going to see moving forward for a while. 32 this year is equivalent to, I don't know, 40, 45, 50 in a typical draft year. So yeah, no, it's not. So I'm not going to hang on to that. But I think you make a great point, Brandon, because there is an edge problem. Because even if you made that deal you're talking about and you include Nwosu in it, in my opinion, they would still, even with Crosby on the roster, have to go add a veteran that can contribute and draft a guy high, because all of a sudden that room gets really, really thin when you start talking about a 33-year-old DeMarcus Lawrence, Hall in the last year of his deal. And now Derek Hall's going to cost $20 million, right? If Boye Mafe gets $20 million on the market, Derek Hall's going to get $20 million on the market. And then you have, and then Connor O'Toole and Jared Ivey. Like, you would still need to add some certainty in veteran free agency, whatever's left, maybe a trade, and still draft a guy. So they got to stack a couple of players in that room.
I agree with this fully. Go ahead, Mookie.
I was going to say, isn't it funny that our very first syndicate together, it was our first syndicate together. We were talking about, should the Seahawks trade for Micah Parsons? And this before we knew how good this defense could be. And we all agree that this was going to be one of the better defenses in the league. And now suddenly, after the Seahawks win the Super Bowl, we haven't gone full circle or anything, but we're having the same discussion, because even though the Seahawks defense was amazing, it wasn't like it was the edge rushers who were the important part of that defense. The interior did so much to open things up for the edges as well. Go ahead, Bryce.
Well, I'm just going to add another piece of this. And I think it again leads into what Brandon's talking about, and Dan, and I agree, we do have an edge problem. Here's the other thing. You also don't have the same secondary that you had last year. You don't have Reek Woolen. You don't have Kobe Bryant. You're going to be Ty Nakata or DeAnthony Bell. You're going to have Josh Jobe, and you don't know, is it Nehemiah Pritchett? Is it a draft pick? Like, you also don't necessarily have that lockdown defense in the secondary in behind. Really, the only group here you're returning in full is Ernest Jones and Drake Thomas, Tyrese Knight, and Chris Paul as your linebacking core, which last year was the group that we were all going, what exactly outside of Ernest Jones are we doing with this group? And that's the most stability you really have now on this defense. There's turnover at the edge position. There's turnover in the secondary. So, yeah, I tend to agree. Now that I think back a little bit on Brandon's initial question, and now I think about that secondary, which I kind of in my mind I hadn't really thought of, I might actually make that deal now to that point of, hey, we're not necessarily going to have a defensive backfield that's used to playing all together and have the same depth that we have. So we're going to need those pressures to turn into sacks.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing to that too. I think it's a great price, and it brings up a just kind of a mindset and a philosophy that I talk about all the time, and that is, there's this fallacy among the fan base sometimes that you can be completely set at a certain position group. Even going back to last year's draft, if I suggested in a mock draft scenario that we take a defensive tackle, I would get so much backlash, because we're good. We got Leo Williams, Byron Murphy, and Jaron Reed. We're good. It's the NFL. How long have you been watching football? Injuries happen, regression happens, age happens, finances get involved. You're not good. It just shows how fine the line is, where the Seahawks have the leading scoring defense in the NFL last year, win the Super Bowl, and yet that edge group is on shaky ground. And even that defensive tackle group, if Leonard Williams gets hurt significantly, imagine how quickly that changes. This is a good example of that. That's why best player available, always add talent. You can never have too much.
It's an amen to that. And I just think you guys are in agreement on this. The second round thing is a valid. You go to 32 NFL teams and say, if you're picking at 32 in this draft this year, where you're going to be selecting, are you getting a first or second round talent? 32 teams would tell you, not one or two or three. 32 teams would tell you you're getting a second round talent in this particular draft when you're picking there. So when I look at this prospective trade, it's a first in name, but it's really a second round pick and almost a third round pick if you think to the fact that we're probably picking at least in the 20s next year. So for a second and third round pick, do I go out for Max Crosby, knowing I've got him under contract? And I kind of would take that risk. I'll roll those dice. But I understand if not, too. I'm not saying I'm a hardliner on this.
So I flipped to Brandon's side. I'm making that trade. But here's the other factor, too, Dan, to your point about that interior D-line. Really, Byron Murphy and Riley Mills, who's coming off an injury, so we'll see what Riley Mills can do. Leo's in the last year of his deal.
Mm-hmm.
Jaron Reed, I'm pretty sure, is coming up to, I don't know if it was a 3 or 2 year deal he signed.
It's a 3-year deal.
He may be. Yeah. So, like, who knows if Jaron Reed plays after this year? He might finally hang it up and say, I'm done, I'm tapping out.
Mm-hmm.
And you still have to figure out if you're paying Leo. So really, you only have 2 D tackles and Brandon Peely now back on your roster. Like, that's another huge shift. Like, this is where I think, you know, to Brandon's point, if you bring in that player for what you're actually asking to pay for it, even though there's some injury risk there, and yes, the long-term factor of it, you may only get 4 years out of Max Crosby. Those still might be 4 elite years that allow your defense to maintain its dark side mentality.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Amen. Let's start with a fun question on this one to you, Mookie. Give me 2 teams that you think have, quote unquote, won for agency, and it could be in value. It doesn't have to be who spent the most. 2 teams that won for agency, 2 teams you feel like maybe lost, or a team you feel like lost for agency, was just off their rocker crazy.
I think the type, as far as like, I'm going to go with the loser side first because it's always good to be provocative. I think that the Titans are just doing whatever the hell. I mean, I like the John Franklin Myers signing, but like they spent north of $250 million collectively in free agent contracts. Like Wan'Dale Robinson's all right. But like there's just not a lot there that I think makes them better as a whole. I think their defense will be better. Like they got Jermaine Johnson and they've got Franklin Myers, as I mentioned earlier, and they've seemingly had like a string of secondary additions. Like I think they signed Cordell Flott and a couple other people. I think they signed somebody else from Kansas City. Kansas City basically lost their whole secondary. So
Alontae Taylor, I think, is you're thinking they got from the Saints.
No, it wasn't New Orleans. Yeah, it was Alontae Taylor at $20 million a year. And while I think he's a good corner, I don't think he's like a top market kind of guy. So I think this is one of those areas where yes, Tennessee had to spend money because like that's a very talent poor team, but I don't know if they necessarily spent it in the best way. And I would argue Kansas City, even after signing Kenneth Walker, did not make the most out of free agency because of how much they lost defensively. Like you traded McDuffie because you probably weren't going to pay him fine, but you lose McDuffie, you lose Watson. I think they lost Leo Chenal to the Commanders. Like Chris Jones is kind of on the decline, or at least that's how he looked last year. I think that defense could be in for a significant drop-off, which means more pressure on Mahomes, more pressure on Walker, essentially, to be that main playmaker for Kansas City. And they still don't really have, to me, a plus receiving group, especially if Rashee Rice is going to be in legal trouble pretty much every week. So I don't feel like Kansas, just because they signed Kenneth Walker, I don't think that means Kansas City's back. In fact, I think they're going to have a hard time getting back to the top in a division as good as the AFC West. As far as teams that I think did well in free agency, I actually like what New England did. And New England, of course, has got this whole, schedule merchants, this and that. I don't think they were, obviously they weren't 14-3 good. They weren't in Seattle's class. But I think they're a team on the rise. And to move on from Stephon Diggs and sign Romeo Doubs, the only worry is really just the concussion history. I think Romeo Doubs really fits schematically what Drake May also does very well. So I think he's going to be a good addition for them. And for a value pick, I think Kevin Byard, knowing they lost Jalen Hawkins, he's been one of my favorite safeties for a bit. I'm a fan of what New England did there. I'm seeing in the comments, Brian Cook went to Cincinnati. So yeah, Kansas City basically having to totally redo that secondary. Colts got fleeced by Daniel Jones. That was probably my other team. I don't know who they were bidding against to give Daniel Jones $44 million a year. I mean, yeah,
is Daniel Jones going to make $1 billion before he retires?
He has surpassed Kirk Cousins to me as far
he's
as
on the Kirk Cousins career plan.
He's a bag getter with one playoff run in his career. Like it's unbelievable. I'm trying to think of another free agent winner other than the Seahawks, as far as obviously. And I'm kind of stuck on a second winner.
It shows you how bad the money's been spent.
Yeah, Carolina. I thought that they got a bit of a steal with Devin Lloyd to offset the fact that they paid Jalen Phillips way more than I thought he'd get. But as a whole, I think Carolina's defense could be a fair bit better next season. I don't think Evero is a bad defensive coordinator. I just think that Carolina defense just lacks talent at key positions. But you got J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson as a good cornerback group. Now you got Devin Lloyd to significantly upgrade the linebacker spot. We'll see if Jalen Phillips can live up to that contract and stay healthy, keeping in mind he blew out his Achilles 2 years ago. And Carolina has got something here to build off of, as opposed to thinking that this little run in a horrible division meant that they were, just an 8-9 flash in the pan. I think that they're on the right track for once.
Dan, where were you at on the same note?
I mean, I think we're all going to say the Rams. It's remarkable to me that we sit here, and trades are a part of it, obviously. It's remarkable that we sit here. It's March 12th. And in my opinion, like, their roster's done. It's complete. And I can't remember the last time we thought that about any team. Like, their biggest weakness last year was the secondary, and they addressed it by first they extended, Quentin Lake midway through the season. They brought back Cam Curl, and then they went out and got the two corners. And, Jalen Watson was a guy, and not just because I'm a WSU grad, but I liked as an option here in Seattle if they lost Reek Woolen and wanted to replace him in free agency. So it's remarkable to me that they are where they are. And I do think, one of you mentioned it earlier, I do think that that kind of leads into some of the fan unrest in the Northwest. Like, well, we have to answer that, right? Well, you don't have to answer it on March 12th. You only have to answer it by August, let's say. So I love what they did. And then, I'll jump in on the Carolina Panthers too, because that's one that I had in mind. And yeah, I think that's a lot of money for Jalen Phillips, but I like what they did. They went for quantity over quality, right? They had a couple of glaring needs. They addressed them. They paid handsomely for it. They're a playoff team last year, young team on the rise. I like that they added Jalen Phillips and Devin Lloyd. Now they have like elite players at every level of the defense, right? You add that to Derek Brown. You add that to JC Horn. Like, that's the makings of a pretty nasty little defense there. And then they're looking at continuity, I think, to bring that offense up. So those are my two winners. Losers, there's a couple. Like, I feel like the Detroit Lions have just kind of given up. I really don't know. Like, I kind of feel sorry for them. Like, they were sort of my favorite non-Seahawk team 3 years ago. I love the way they played and how nasty they were and how they're built. And it's almost like, did Dan Campbell jinx them by saying, well, we might not ever get back here again? Like, did he manifest that? Because they spent so much money on some of their top stars. It's kind of reminiscent of what the Seahawks did in 13 and 14. So they're not able to have the middle class. They don't have the depth, but yet they still have some big holes on their roster, and they're now not able to go out and fill them because they're paying so much money to a mediocre quarterback and because they've managed their cap so improperly. Like, you think Isaiah Pacheco and Cade Mays and Larry Borum is going to get you to the next level in what might be the second best division in football? So that's one. And then I had someone else. Oh, and then the Colts. You already kind of covered it, Mookie. I'm not giving Daniel Jones a 3-year deal. I'm not giving him any more than a 1. And if he says, well, there's other options out there for me, then go take them, right? There's 10 former starters at quarterback on the free agent market right now, more than we typically see. I'd rather go with Kirk Cousins and draft a guy or sign another young bounce back guy or try to develop Riley Leonard than give 3 years and over $100 million to Daniel Jones. And then Alec Pierce, I know he was the hot name this free agency period, but $30 million for Alec Pierce.
Especially you lose Pittman.
Yeah, and you lose Pittman. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing there either.
Bryce, how about you? Are you similarly aligned?
So for me, if I had to pick my two teams that I think did the best so far in free agency, I'm actually going to pick one that we've just spent a bunch of time talking about. I'm going to pick the Raiders. I actually like what the Raiders have done in a way with their linebackers, with Dean, with Walker. They go out and yes, they overpaid on some guys. I will say Linderbaum, for example. But we know Kubiak needs that center in his offense, and they don't view Jackson Powers Johnson as that guy. They, went out and made, the deal to get Naylor as a receiver in there. I still think they need to address that. But this is the first time I looked at some of the Raiders' moves, and I went, you're actually assessing and properly addressing them with some proper talent, and you're not just blowing money on aging out players or guys that are fast. Like Walker and Dean as two inside linebackers in a 3-4 defense are a good tandem, and they're both still relatively young, right? So I like what the Raiders have done. Obviously the Rams have done a fantastic job in that regard. Another team, I kind of like what the Cardinals did, weirdly enough. Like, as weird as it is, I see Brandon kind of rolling his eyes going there.
I get the Algier. It fits their system.
I said on a NFC West show earlier today that I think it might not be the sexiest free agent class, but they kind of did what they need to do right now, given where they are. They just added some solid players.
Exactly. And that's what
That's the thing I like about it. They're going into the tank. They're leaning into the
Yes,
tank to me.
they're
with these
leaning
signings.
into what they
They
need
know
to lean
who they
into.
are.
They're not kidding themselves. They're
Yes.
not going, hey, we can sneak into the wild card. They're like,
Gardner
no, we're
Minshew,
like 2
guys.
years.
I gotta be on board with Gardner Minshew. I just have
Yeah,
to.
but they're like, we're 2 years away from being really a competitive, potentially wild card team. Let's finally lean into this. Let's get some solid floor pieces. You know, Tyler Algier will replace James Conner if they basically cut him loose or after this season. Like, so those are two teams I like what they did. And obviously the Rams. Losers for me, I have no idea what the Jets are doing at all. Like, they're just kind of bringing back, you know, getting Fitzpatrick, Geno Smith. Like, they're just, they're trying to, I don't know what the Jets are doing. Another team that I wasn't a massive fan of what they did in some respects is actually the San Francisco 49ers. I don't understand. Like, I get the appeal of Mike Evans. I do. He's a great receiver. One, I don't know how he's going to do with that substation. Let's be honest there. But part of it too is I look
Ligaments
at like
are already loosening.
Can't avoid.
I look at it and I go, Mike's always kind of played well with quarterbacks that can get him the ball down the field and let him go do those things. I don't know if Brock Purdy can do that. They don't know what's going on with Trent Williams in that situation, which is a big piece of this. You go out and get Greenlaw again, and he's, you know, kind of this hit and miss player. It's just there to me. I don't see the vision there with that aging roster of like, hey, we really need to shore up some of these pieces. You've kind of spent like you've got the depth in behind, and I'm just kind of sitting there going, do you not remember the divisional round where we waxed you because you had no solid depth in behind, and it wasn't even a game that was worth really playing? Like, it was just, you know, and I'm not. Again, that's why I just look at it and I go, like, I don't think the 49ers had a good free agency.
I saw one ranking, or, you know, everyone does their free agency grades now after the first couple of days. And I saw one national website that actually gave the 49ers an A, even though they didn't sign that many players, but strictly because of Mike Evans. And I thought, man, that's, you know, he's one of the best receivers of our generation. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? But he has had soft tissue injuries his entire career. And, you know, anyone who's ever played fantasy football knows it's dicey having Mike Evans on your roster. He could win you your championship, but it could also cost it for you. And at the age of 33, to be putting that much, you know, giving them that much credit for that signing, that's dicey.
They just tried. Sorry, go ahead, Mookie.
I like their trade for Odigizua from Dallas.
Mm-hmm. That was smart.
Like the Cowboys are insane for what they do with their defensive line, but Trent Williams might not be a 49er for much longer. And we have no idea what their plan is for a backup tackle or you know, a successor to Trent Williams. And Trent is still playing at a high level at his age. But if he goes, we know what happens when that 49ers offensive line is not pristine. And that can make life really hard for not just Purdy, but especially McCaffrey.
I have breaking news.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We got
little breaking news, but Derek Young has signed with the Las Vegas Raiders.
Oh,
there we go.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So we lost it. I thought it was a slam dunk that he'd be back, but okay.
Well, I think the fact that they tendered Bobo, I kind of wondered, and the fact that they kept Shaheed, it was an either or. I do wonder if they keep Cody White, and if they don't, then maybe this is still an endorsement of Ricky White, because Ricky White could be like another Derek Young to me. He didn't really do a whole lot as a receiver in preseason, but if he can be that special teams guy to replace Derek, that's a good use of a 7th round pick as far as I'm concerned.
That's a great point. I liked everything I saw out of Ricky White. Every day that I went to camp last year, I thought he looked like he belonged. He just got caught in a numbers game. I really expect him to push for a roster spot.
Another thing, Emmanuel Wilson put out a tweet saying, I'm thanking everybody that I can play for my childhood team.
Nice. Your childhood team. How old is
Emmanuel
Wilson? Nice. He must have been following the Holmgren teams then.
Jeez Louise, that's deep back. I'm kind of with Bryce on the Niner problem with it. I don't hate the moves on the surface of it, but at the same point in time, sorry, somebody's on their motorbike outside. The Osa, go for it or don't. The Niners do too much fence straddling to me. Last year, you were in a go for it mode and you freaking ate $100 million. This year, you're kind of in a go for it mode. You're going to make a trade for Azua. You're going to put 3rd round pick. We're in it. We're going for it. But then you're also going to be moving Trent Williams. And then you're also releasing Brian Ayuk. And then, but you're bringing Mike Evans. And we're going to squeeze out the last of Mike Evans' career. It's all reactionary to me, what the Niners do. It doesn't show a lot of vision as how they're applying it to me. And it just doesn't it's not that they're not trying to win. It's just that you're not trying to go for it over the top hard. You're just trying to kind of you're trying to put a foot on both sides of the fence to me. Is that wrong?
No, I think that's 100% right, Brandon. And that's how I look at it. Like, commit either way. Commit and go, or commit to, okay, you know what? Our window's closed. We need to retool this to get back to where we can reopen the window. Because that's what I think the Seahawks did so well last year, or sorry, 2 years ago now, when they moved off Pete. They stopped straddling the fence. They finally made the decision, okay, we're going to push Humpty Dumpty off the ledge and retool this thing and see what happens. We're going to take those that one step back to take 2 steps forward. And lo and behold, we took 1 step back and took 2 steps forward and won a Super Bowl. Sometimes you have to take that risk, and it's not always going to work out in 2 years like it did for Seattle. But I think there's a higher chance the 49ers become a team that can contend again, truly contend again, if they actually commit to, hey, we got to retool some of this. We got to figure out what our plan is at left tackle outside of just bringing back Trent Williams constantly until he basically becomes a fossil, and stop trying to plug gaps. Like, Kyle Shanahan's system is about precise route running. We saw that with JSN this year. DK was never a guy that ran precise routes, and he struggled in these type of offenses with Waldron. He was great. Deep ball, let him go get it. Deep post, let him go get it. Mike Evans is better than DK. I'm not comparing their abilities, but Mike Evans is also not the inside out breaking shifty kind of, I can create a bunch of separation with my route running. He's more, I'm going to go physically out body you. Well, do you have the quarterback that can throw him that ball? Is that Brock Purdy's strength? I don't think it is.
Well, and I'll say this about Mike Evans too. I think the guaranteed money is only like $16, $17 million, right? So it's not a huge risk for the 49ers at all. It's a pretty team-friendly deal, but it would behoove him to stay healthy and play for as long as he can, because he certainly does not have a second career arc as either an analyst or a front office guy or a scout in any way, because he said at his introductory press conference, he felt like the 49ers were one player away last year from winning the Super Bowl, and that player was a good receiver. So I question his scouting eye.
A good question. From losing 41-13 as opposed to 41-6, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless Mike Evans is going to
that's a hell of a gap to bridge for one man.
Maybe he's going to be a designated pass rusher too and play both ways. Maybe that's what he's talking about.
Yeah. The transition to safety, dual play. We got a couple of donations and member messages here. Let's crack on with those here. First up, Sean Collins, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. Welcome aboard, man. Appreciate you joining up. Let me get your guys' thing off so you're not looking weird. Thank you for that, though, Sean. We got Feed Me with 25 months as a Hawks Nest member. It says, Brando, I told you when we signed him in 2023 that Chris Stoll is from the factory and he would get re-signed. The factory never lies. Big Bryce, sideline?
2-year deal. Got a 2-year deal. I thought it was interesting, was recapping all of the division moves through the first week. All 4 teams in the NFC West division locked up a long snapper this week. So they know where their bread's buttered, right?
It's getting hard to find. These kids aren't long snapping like they used to. You used to drive by your roads on the blocks. You'd see that kid out in the front street thrown up against a tree over and over again. Don't see that anymore. Stacey Dunn's the goodbye brand video games. We got Sloby1. Thank you for the $5 donation. Much love to y'all. Go Hawks, and please trade us. Please trade us Crosby for a bag of chips. I think we would all definitely say a bag of chips.
Wait, hold on. What type of chips are we talking about here?
Doesn't matter.
Could be tortilla.
I'll give him the premium. I'll give him that organic premium stuff if that's what we got to do. Give a Costco box.
Bag of kettle chips. Those are the most overrated things ever made.
They are overrated. I hate kettle chips. I don't hate them, but they're just overrated. Thank you, Sloby. Thomas Cox with a $5 dono on one of your guys' side here says, I hate to say patience isn't my strong suit, but Shaheed kind of relaxes me. What player isn't rumored could be available at the trade deadline? What player isn't rumored to could be available at the trade deadline? Have you guys looked out at all on that? And far looks,
depending on what teams hang on to guys, I think I kind of think we were talking about Jonathan Grenard earlier. Maybe the trade deadline is kind of the sweet spot for him if they can't find a taker in the next week or so. And that, if that does come to fruition, that might be where the Seahawks get involved. The problem with Grenard, as much as I think he would be a perfect fit, culture-wise, play style-wise, all of that, he's insisting that he wants a new deal. And there's 2 years left on his current contract. John Schneider's not going to do that. So unless he backs off of that, or he agrees to come here because he wants to be here so badly or something along those lines, to waive that demand, then they're not going to make that move, not knowing if he's going to hold out or anything like that. But at the trade deadline, different story. You can extend, they did it with Charles Cross last year, right? Like that's the loophole in John's rule. Once the season started, you get into the year, now you don't have 2 years left on your deal. Maybe you can do something like that. So if the Vikings aren't able to find a taker for Grenard by the draft, I think he could definitely be in play at the deadline.
That would make sense. You guys got any other names?
Not off the top of my head. Like, I know Achan is somebody we've discussed, but I don't think Miami's just going to they're not going to do 100% fire sale. There's no point in signing Malik Willis to the contract that he got and also have the cupboard as bare as possible with the number of people they've lost.
And they are on record as saying that they want to extend Achan. They think he's part of the foundation. They want to hang on to him. So, we'll see. That could be, whatever.
It feels like a deal's getting done there, more likely than not. Not 100%, but it just feels like it's trending in that direction.
Yeah. No,
I can't see a lot. And part of this is that you have to wait for those teams that are going to fall away that think they're contenders that are no longer contenders. Can you pry a Brian Burns away from a Giants team at the trade deadline?
Thibodeau, but yeah, you might be onto something there.
Thibodeau too is a possibility in that realm, but we kind of need some of the teams to sort of fall off that think they're contenders right now. That everybody's like, oh yeah, they're definitely a contender, and then boom, they kind of drop off.
I think Thibodeau could be moved at the draft potentially.
No,
like I think they would move him at the draft.
He's on his 5th year, so
yeah.
But you're only paying for that.
Yeah, it's hard to see the value go up more if you're getting him only half a season with no ability to retain him. So
I do want to touch on the first part of Thomas's comment, because I don't know that we spent enough time on Shaheed. That was the one surprise. We got I think we talked about it last week. We got the report, the Adam Schefter report shortly before. Was it the next day? Maybe it was on Friday, that the Seahawks and Shaheed were far apart on contract talks, that it looked like he was going to be in the $18 million range. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but at that point I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to have to start mock drafting wide receivers. And I actually started watching more wide receiver tape over the weekend. And then the day went on Monday, and then the deal got done later in the day. It does feel like, with what the numbers look like, I feel like the Seahawks had to come up a little bit from where they originally were on Shaheed to get that done. And you have to wonder if it's a little bit of like tit for tat with, the Rams just went and solidified their secondary. Like, we have to make sure we have that other weapon in our wide receiver room. That was the one move that I don't think it was a foregone conclusion that was going to happen. And I was a little bit surprised when the news broke that we were able to retain him, given the sort of the momentum that all the reports were going up until that point.
Well, it's really interesting because just Seattle Sports put out a clip from John Schneider's show that he does every Thursday, and it talked about the Rashid situation. He goes, with Rashid, we thought it was going to be difficult to get him back, but we hung with it. He really wanted to be here. He loved his experience here.
And the things he had to say yesterday, I thought reiterated that, like that.
Yeah.
This is where he wanted to be. And I think that's important to note, because some of these guys, I think, make decisions as soon as the clock strikes, right? Like Walker's not a good example, because I think they were so far apart, right? And maybe they were on Mafe too. And I don't even think he was in the discussion. But I think this is a good example of where they've built a culture that players want to be a part of. And he meant what he said when we traded for him. And he said that the day that he was introduced, that like, this is where I want to be. We'll get it worked out. And then all of a sudden you kind of have to pause, because generational money doesn't come along that often. And the second contract is the most important contract for these guys, especially a guy that was undrafted. Right. And so I appreciate the fact, and I think we take this for granted sometimes, that Shaheed, the person, sat with this for a minute, looked at the big picture, took everything into account. It wouldn't surprise me if we find out later that he turned down more money to go elsewhere.
Also, I think when Buffalo traded for DJ Moore, that kind of set off a little chain reaction as far as what the wide receiver market could look like, because Buffalo looked like a possible Shaheed option. And then Jalen Naylor signed with the Raiders for a fair bit less money than Rashid Shaheed. but still, like, okay, that's another option probably off the table. So you're looking around the league, and I noticed, like, as the day went on with Monday, Shaheed and Reek weren't signed. So with Reek, I felt, okay, there's probably a good chance he's not coming back anyway. But with Shaheed, the longer that he didn't go, the more I thought maybe Seattle actually can keep him. And as I mentioned in the chat when Bryce did a show with Jeff Simmons earlier in the week, that contract is on the lower end for a second contract for a receiver who's not on his rookie deal anymore. It's like a second option possibly as soon as this year, or 2A, 2B with Cup. Like, it's not T. Higgins money. It's not a case where Seattle's got to pay JSN and they got to pay Shaheed like he's T. Higgins. No, Cincinnati, I don't think really should have extended Higgins. But with what Seattle did, next year Cup is probably off the books, and then you still have Shaheed, JSN on his new deal, we assume, then Shaheed, and then Torrey Horton, and Horton's still on his rookie deal. So really, anybody freaking out over the money that they're spending at wide receiver right now, JSN hasn't been extended yet, and it's not like that money is going to change like right this minute. This cap's going to balloon with a 2026 deal. You're really just focusing on Cup and Shaheed right now. You're not paying through the nose at wide receiver.
Bryce, did you have something to add?
No, I was just, I'm just thinking about this whole thing with Shaheed. And again, this helps you out in the next two drafts. You're not stressing to go draft a receiver to fill in a role to play with JSN. Like, you've got a guy now. You've got Torrey Horton. Again, you're hedging a little bit. Like, that's more what your hedge is now in the receiver room is, can Torrey Horton stay healthy? We've got 1 and 2. Can Torrey Horton be 3, potentially move into 2, and move Shaheed down to 3 at some point? But you at least have that comfortability where you look at it and you go, I don't have to spend capital high up in a draft to necessarily deal with my top 3 receiver.
Well, I think you and Dan both touched on this as well, in that you mentioned the draft as the pivot, and part of the reason you guys are mentioning that subconsciously or consciously has to do with the thinness of the free agent class for wide receivers and the pliable options that would have existed out there, forcing your hand into going that direction of it. And of course, none of us want to be in that territory where you walk into the draft having to select to this position because you have a hole that you need to fit. And this comes back to why it does make us so happy, along with Thomas, as to why you're just happy to get that done now, because it would have meant the alternative, I think.
Yeah.
Couple lot more donations here. Thomas, thank you again for another $5 here on Bryce or Dan's side here. I actually like the Jadarian Price pick, Dan. I honestly hope Price becomes a Hawk. Heck, I double up on Mock with corners, edges, running backs, and O-line.
It's an interesting concept, and one that I've played around with more the last couple of days. Look, historically, we know that John likes to hedge all major needs heading into the draft so they can let the board fall to him, right? Sometimes to a fault. That was a problem for many years, is he would sign too many of those mid-level veterans to hedge those needs, and then you get stuck with all those one-year deals for more than they're signing this year, those $4, $5, $6, $7 million one-year deals that kind of eat up your cap space. And I think it's plausible that in the next 6 weeks, like, I feel a lot better about this theory right now than I did 5 hours ago before they signed Emmanuel Wilson and brought back Anthony Bell and all this. I think it's possible we might get to the draft in 6 weeks. And even with 4 picks, we're sitting there thinking they could double up. Maybe it's a good corner class. Maybe they take 2 corners. Maybe they take 2 edges, right? And double dip there. It's not outside the realm of possibility.
So it's really funny you say that, Dan, because I did a mock draft while we're on the show here, and I had 6 picks. I ended up getting 6 picks.
Are you that bored?
Sorry?
Are you that bored?
No, I'm in draft mode. You guys got my brain going, and I haven't done a lot of mocks. I did my first mock today. I even sent it to you.
Dare you?
Hey, you got to multitask. It's that coach's brain. It doesn't shut off. So I ended up, to your point, going with 2 corners, 2 running backs, an edge, and a offensive guard that ended up presenting itself, but doubling up in some of those spots where I got Chris Johnson. I was able to get Mike Washington Jr. and Robert Henry Jr. at the end of the draft, right? So that may be a possibility for Seattle where they do double up in those spots, because another factor in that running back room situation is nobody's on a long-term deal. Everyone's basically on a 1-year deal, whether it's Jacardier Wright, Cam Akers, Velus Jones, Emmanuel Wilson, Zach Charbonnet's on the last year of his deal. Like, nobody in that room. That whole room could look different in 2027 outside of them drafting somebody this year.
Do you guys feel like if Charbonnet hadn't injured his knee, that we'd be having a very different conversation right now, that we'd be talking about Charbonnet probably signed a long-term extension by now and was the unquestioned RB1, and that a lot of people's nervousness about this wouldn't be what it is right now?
I don't think they would have extended him, but
No.
I think that Seattle would have still drafted a running back, but not as a running back to start. As a running back one.
Because I still feel like if he comes back in October, November, whatever, as soon as he proves he's 100% healthy, I think they extend him before, a year ago at this time, a year from now at this time, we're talking about Charbonnet being on a deal.
Do you think, Dan, though?
They love him.
Sorry, go ahead, Bryce. Bryce?
Well, I was just gonna say I've got to hop off here, guys. I got to go coach a football practice, but I'm gonna leave you with this thought: if Charbonnet doesn't get hurt, I don't know if Ken Walker has the same playoff run that he did, and maybe we're talking about Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet still being the Seahawks 2 running backs. I'm gonna leave you with that thought.
Alternate timelines. I like that kind of stuff.
See you guys later. Appreciate you, and have a good night, guys.
Yeah,
see you guys.
Have a good night, Bryce.
Oh, I'll see you tomorrow, Mookie.
So the one thing I've wondered with this, though, Dan, is just a little bit about evolution of thought with John, because he has shown a willingness to evolve what he wants to do over the years. All of the last contracts he's given out for running backs, all of them of any significant money since Marshawn's third deal, have not been good, have been bad money spent.
Yeah,
every single dead money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, I kind of wonder, as we've not seen him, especially going this offseason now, as approached the position as it's been so far with going with the bare minimum deal, having lost Walker to the I wonder if he's going to evolve a little bit in his thought on that, of being a little bit hesitant to spend money. Like, I'll put high draft picks towards the position, but I'm not going to give money to the position, because not only is it blown up in my face, how can you not, if you're John? It's not only blown up collectively in my face. Chris Carson, dead money. Marshawn Lynch, dead money. Dead money for Carlos Hyde. Dead, or not dead, just money thrown to nothing. Eddie Lacy, $4 million, nothing. $7 million to Rashad Penny on a 1-year deal, nothing. You got nothing out. Not just to simply, well, there's kind of middle of the road, horrible deals. So to me, that, and then the NFL wide, these deals tend to blow up anyway in the NFL when you do this. Yeah. And I just go, like, how do you math that at this point to think that it's actually, not that you're saying you're advocating, you're just predicting, but I'm trying to understand how you can advocate at this point to actually spending money on a running back in that way.
Well, because I'm assuming he won't be expensive. He's not going to be in that Ken Walker stratosphere. But I think you're right. I think John might be kind of taking this whole devaluation of running backs thing like head on. And he's intent to prove over the next 5-6 years that you just don't get big money as a running back in Seattle, and we're just going to keep drafting guys. Look, it makes sense. I understand the argument for it. I really do. And what's really fascinating to me is the two sides of the coin, because they're celebrating in Kansas City right now. How long has it been since they've had a dynamic running back they can get excited about to complement Pat Mahomes? And now they got one. They don't care that they're paying him $16 million a year. The dichotomy of that argument is hilarious to me, and also really intriguing. And but again, I'll say it. I like this running back class better than other people, and it's one of the reasons I like the Wilson signing so much today is the variety that it can potentially set you up for, and that we've already talked about, like his play style and how just no nonsense he is. Just get the tough yards. Then let's go get a guy in the draft that has some upside, that can hit the home run, that can do some more things, that can be a third down guy, that can catch some balls. And we saw some of those guys in Mobile, and then some of the other guys weren't there. I think that the opportunity to pair Wilson with one of those guys gives him a pretty good chance to have a solid running back room until Zach comes back. And we don't know what we're going to get. Maybe George Holani stays healthy and establishes himself this year. It's not out of the realm possibility, nor is it out of the realm possibility that Kenny McIntosh could come back healthy and show us what we've all been waiting to see.
Very possible. Mookie, where do you sit on this subject? As far as, are you a hardliner on this with the analytic folks? Are you open-minded to it as far as paying running backs go?
I think as far as paying running backs, we're in an odd spot because most of the top running backs who get paid are also high draft picks. So that would mean Saquon, McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, I'm sure, well, Ken Walker now. So that's 4 off the top of my head.
He's the 5th all time? Isn't it 5th highest AAV of all time? It's crazy.
Well, he's now the highest paid free agent running back we've ever had in NFL history. Bijan, we assume, is going to get paid by Atlanta, and then Jahmyr Gibbs will probably get paid by Detroit sooner rather than later. Everybody I've listed there is a first or second round pick. So I think what Schneider might do is he's not going to abandon the idea, no, don't take a running back early. Now, would I be for taking running backs in the first round? Not really in Seattle's case, earlier in the first round. 32, I'm not too bothered because the only difference is the 50-year option, really, 32 versus 33. But if the whole argument as far as running back valuation, what I don't want to happen is we devalue the position so heavily that there are going to be a lot of players in high school or college that see, I don't have any real earning power at running back if NFL teams are going to not draft me early, where my earnings are higher as a rookie, and also teams are not going to extend me as often because it's not wise to pay running backs because they got such a short shelf life. So I would argue that if the Seahawks want to take a running back in the second round or at pick 32 or trade down from 32 and pick early second round, it's not a ruinous short-term investment. Those are not expensive deals. And you can maximize your window with a running back like Ken Walker or Charbonnet. In the instance, they kind of maximized the window of both the way they did to have a pair of affordable, talented running backs who do two different things. They got two different skill sets. And, okay, you moved on from Walker, but you still got Charbonnet. And we'll see what happens this year. But you can add another running back. It's such a plentiful position that you can always find guys and get good value there. Paying them a big money contract is a totally separate thing. So I wouldn't be upset if Seattle spent at running back this year. It's just they got to be wise to whether they fit the scheme, because famously after Seattle's last Super Bowl, they took Christine Michael one pick before Travis Kelce went, and they took Luke Wilson later on in the draft. No, that was like Luke Wilson was the 2013 draft. I'm trying to remember. No, they took
that gives me a great idea.
They drafted C. Mike the year they won the Super Bowl. So this is Marshawn's breakout year with the Seahawks. But they took Kristen Michael, and they really didn't have to. They already had Turbin. So they had Lynch and Turbin. They took C. Mike. That was kind of a luxury pick. Here you have more of a need at running back. But if it's just 4 years and it's on an affordable contract and he's talented, a second or third round pick on a running back to me is not as egregious as I previously once held that opinion. Paying a running back $15 million or north of that could be a bad investment. And that to me is a totally different conversation.
I think we're all
this one away, you guys. I want to remember this when it's the slower part of the season, maybe June, and we're trying to come up with like story ideas, right? Topic ideas. How about just give me an idea, Mookie. How about the almost team, where you could go back in Seahawks history and look at guys that were sniped right above us in the draft, right? Creed Humphrey would be our center, right? I mean, we could have a lot of fun with that. Just a thought.
Oh yeah, it's hypothetical. I
did a bit of this exercise a little bit on a couple of these recently that you mentioned this. I probably don't have them well at hand. I'd have to grab them. But yeah, I did something in regards to the trades they made for the trades that we ended up making for the first round picks, the Percy Harvin deal and the alternate, looking at kind of the alternate guys we could have there. And of course I can't find it.
You can drive yourself crazy, but it's a lot of fun too.
Yeah, it is. And there's no guarantee you would have grabbed the best of the guys, because that's what you're doing on that is, of course, you're kind of grabbing the best on the list. I think we are in alignment when it comes to the running back thing, and that we're all, it sounds like, willing, you with your Jadarian Price pick at 32, that we're willing to go out there and say, I'll go and put assets to it. Just don't double dip the assets. You do the draft pick, but you leave the money off the board, and you wash, rinse, repeat every 4 years. And the last part I'll just mention on this is that we know about these running back contracts is that you have them performing their best typically on the rookie deal, not when they get into the theoretical physical prime at 25 and they get into that second contract. They tend to be at their highest performing on the rookie contract in addition. And just really quickly, because I thought you guys would dig this a little bit, here's the deal with this. A couple of these ones that I did on this with the, what you could have gotten. I'm sure you've already probably looked through this knowing you on this, but what you could have gotten with the Jamal pick. And I think you got to think about this stuff as far as alternative options would have gone. This was the Jimmy Graham one, which wasn't too bad, but Preston Smith, Donovan Smith, Mitch Morris would have been a decent guard, though we know we wouldn't have drafted him, right? That's where you can play the game a little bit.
Yeah, you can see why they made that move. That just wasn't a very good draft, but
you missed out on Travis Frederick when you're already in line to start to look at moving on from Max Unger. Right. You could have had the Max Unger replacement right in house there. So it is kind of an interesting exercise a little bit to look back. So that'd be a fun show. But I think we are in the same place on this, gentlemen. Are we not? Do I capture that correctly? Would you say?
Yeah. And I think it'll just. I think the Wilson signing again today does open the doors to maybe drafting a guy stylistically that's a little bit different. Like my philosophy is, I still want them to draft a guy next month that has RB1 upside, like that has the complete skill set. But maybe you look at, like, maybe in their minds, they're thinking, okay, we are going to bring Charbonnet is going to be a Seahawk in 27 one way or another. I mean, he's probably motivated to be here coming off the injury, rebuild his value. Maybe it's just a 1-year deal, but he's a more of a north-south runner, straight ahead type. And then you have Wilson this year that, maybe it opens the door to draft like a Claiborne out of Wake Forest or a Henry out of UTSA, where they're a little bit smaller. They're not the typical Seahawks prototype, right? And they're a little bit of a complementary style to a Wilson. Although I still prefer to just take a guy with a complete skill set. And there's some guys that we like in this draft.
Yeah.
Got to couple it together sometimes.
It's going to be a hell of a running back competition because, like, George Holani is an interesting case because he's had an injury history that dates back to college, and it's bled into the NFL. He's gotten hurt on special teams twice already, last year and then this year. But when he was getting carries in the Arizona game, I think that was like 2 weeks before he got hurt against Tennessee. Like, that's the first time he was getting non-garbage time carries in a game. So that was already a hint. And then in deputizing for Charbonnet, he might not have done anything special with his carries, but he showed value as a receiving back and as a blitz, as a pass protector. So I think there's going to be there will be some opportunities for Holani. Kenny McIntosh definitely had his opportunities in 2024, but again, injury in 2023 meant he missed a lot of that year, missed all of 2025. I think he's actually got, of the group below Charbonnet, I think he's got the highest ceiling, but I don't know how much that ceiling's been lowered because he's now had 2 knee injuries in 3 seasons. I don't really factor Velus Jones. Like, the dude switched positions last year. He wasn't a running back until last year. And the reason why he's a running back is because he fumbled so much at receiver and as a returner. So I don't really think he factors much beyond camp. And Cam Akers, 2 blown out Achilles. Like, I don't think he's going to factor much either. So it's still, and Jacardier Wright is somebody we liked to preseason last year. And he'll have to kind of prove it again this preseason, just because we don't want to get carried away and think of him as, like, we've had our fair share of running backs we've fallen in love with in preseason that are undrafted, like the Troy Maine-Popes of the world. So we kind of have to prove it with Jacardier Wright. But it's going to be like an interesting competition to see who gets those like 3-4 spots come August.
You just made me think of something. I think, given everything that we've just laid out, no matter which back you draft next month, even if it is Jadarian Price, let's say hypothetically they take him at 32, they're not going to bubble wrap him. Right? We're not going to see, like, the preseason this year, those 3 preseason games. The most fascinating thing we're going to see in those game situations is the running back competition, because none of those guys will be worthy of holding out.
Exactly. Nobody is a bona fide number 1,
right?
Bell cow back.
Yeah. Well, and then if you get a rookie, you're going to want to give him a lot of reps to get him to teach this scheme and all of the fundamentals within how to read this stuff and do it right. So makes it a little bit more, to your point, enticing to watch the preseason, Dan, then because of that. Upper left, 206. Thank you for the $5 donation. Guys, do you think the Evans pickup was the missing piece for the 49ers? And do we bring Von Miller in for a rotation with Tank? Go Hawks. Go Hawks there, upper left.
I would say the interesting thing, part of this to me is, because we've kind of talked about the Mike Evans thing. No, he's not the last missing piece. They need to fix that defense.
Yeah.
And they need to add some reinforcements on that offensive line. Like, I can only assume, based on the inactivity we've seen from them in free agency, that they're looking at this tackle class, as many as 7 or 8, potentially, depending on which analyst you read, could be going in the first round. It's a good tackle class, and it really falls off from there. So I would expect that. Any mock draft I see that doesn't have the 49ers taking a tackle right now, I kind of dismiss. But as far as Von Miller goes, like, until he signs with anyone else or retires, the possibility is that he's going to be here. We know they tried to sign him last year, even after they signed Lawrence, and thought they had a done deal. John Schneider has said this on the record. Miller has even come out and said, yeah, I regret not doing that. Even though he went to Washington and got 9 sacks last year at the age of 34, he regrets not coming here. I think he's a guy that's going to stay on the market. He's a guy that might even be available still until after the draft. So maybe you can sign him without it affecting the comp formula, and his AAV probably isn't going to mess with that anyway. I think he's still a possibility as kind of a ring chasing veteran add-on as a rotational piece until he signs with someone else.
Yeah, I would agree with this. I don't think upper left is going to take him over the top, and I think that he'll help him, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. Not to mention the injury history that Niner team has had. The problematic, you're too top heavy, and you're too top heavy with aging players that you're spending a lot of money on. This doesn't take you further away from that from a Niner perspective here. And it's a little bit like what Dan's doing with Washington. I'll tell you what, he's making a mistake that I just don't get. The same mistake he ran into last year. You don't build the old defense and the young offense. You build the young defense and the old offense if you're going to have to pick one or the other.
That's the old. Remember when Mike Holmgren said that?
Yeah, it's the old home. That's what I said. These are the lessons you learn, Dan. I think that you remember because they're classic. They're timeless. They're not lessons that are just for today and the here and now. These are something you can apply to every generation of football. Kind of like playing great defense, great special teams, and running the ball always all go together in any generation of football. And I believe the same thing when it comes to this. I've seen too many defenses that have been built to be old that you pay for that price of age. They can't run around. They can't fly around. They can't throw their bodies around with the same kind of abandonment that those younger guys do. And you can feel it on the field when you get that. And I think you're going to feel it with Washington. As good as some of these signings look now, let's see how it is when you get some of these guys longer in the tooth. Bobby Wagner back again? Really? I love Bobby, but...
he didn't, or just the fact that he re-signed last year, because I think he's still unsigned.
I thought I saw a note that they'd re-signed him. Maybe it was one of those false notifications, but I thought I'd seen the notification.
They just added a guy. Who did they add?
Okay. It could have been, how this is going now. You're getting these false, and you just see it sideways out of your eye. You're like, really? Up? And you just keep kind of clicking along. So I didn't.
I just shared another image with you down there if you want to put that up, because I think this is fascinating since we're talking about age. You might have to take that banner away. But as much as the 49ers have been an aging team over the last few years, this is what teams have signed so far in free agency and the average age of them. And they're even adding age. Even at this point, 31 years old is the average age of their 7 free agent additions so far this offseason. So I find that interesting.
I just can't see the Super Bowl contention in there when you get that old of a roster.
Look who's number 1.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. We may have a younger roster next year than we did this year, potentially.
Yeah. Which is also why I don't think they go after Von Miller this time. It was a fever dream. I couldn't believe when I pulled it up, they had 9 sacks last year. Like I was watching that the Commanders, not religiously or anything, but it didn't feel like the Commanders were getting stops, punts, anything to suggest that Von Miller had that many sacks. But I don't know if I want to bank on that in his age 37 season. And that's
you need your 4th or 5th guy in your rotation. I could see the value of adding, like I said, what did I call him? A ring chasing veteran. Like Kyle Van Noy is another possibility there. I mean, he's 35 now, so maybe he's kind of gotten over that hill. But just 2 years ago, he had 12 sacks and played for Mike McDonald. So he's a guy that he's going to be out there. He's not going to cost any money. It wouldn't surprise me if they add a vet.
Well, that's where the floor of the position too is it where Uchenna Nwosu and Boye Mafe set it, not to mention Derek Hall, who's right in alignment with them on that productivity front. These guys are setting not just a low-end amount of production for the edge. They're setting a bottom dollar low productivity as far as pass rush goes from the edge. So 9 sacks versus the 2 sacks in Mafe last year for a guy in Miller that played 30% of the snaps. I kind of go, for $7 million, $8 million in a 1-year deal for like Dan said, the 4th edge on your group. I do that. Cam Jordan, I do that. Jadeveon Clowney, I do that.
Right.
That's bang for the buck. That's a value deal to me. You're not paying multi-years. You know what you're going to get in them. You're going to put them in the rotation. You're not going to play them too many snaps and burn them out. And again, it's not like the baseline guys are doing
that you think has more of that like bendy, elite upside off the edge that can just beat a tackle. And there's a number of those guys in this draft. You're not going to be able to count on a lot of productivity from them as a rookie, but try to pair the ceiling and the floor, right?
So that's the question I'd have with you, Dan, on this, though, is that, okay, yeah, you're right. That's a way of going with it. The only worry I have with that is that if you have an opportunity to add 2 rushers on the 1-year, $7 million deal, and I know I'm getting 2 of those same stacks, I'm getting a Von Miller, Cam Jordan, I'm getting a Jadeveon Clowney, Cam Jordan. When I look at these second-round edges over the last 10 years, they're not very productive. when I look at the second round edges over the last 10 years, they have very little productivity over the first couple of years. Yeah. Right. Boye Mafe and Derek Hall look right there. So like, if I'm in a rebuild mode, I'm with you kind of on this, but I do find myself moving into a direction of saying, now while I'm ripping and roaring, I don't want to wait through the growing pains of these edges that take forever to figure out how to rush the passer and the moves and the counters and all of that. I want to get more of the ready-made guys, especially knowing there's always those guys a little over 30 years old, still got a little bit left in the tank, and you're not paying max prices for them. Is that off?
No, I don't think it's off. I think maybe I've adopted this mindset because that's just what I feel this draft class is. With the exception of running back and corner, where I think you can get capable rookie starters through the second round, maybe even into the third. I don't think you can do that at edge. Like if you want to take a guy that you think can contribute as a rookie to us winning games, you have to use pick 32. And even then it's not a sure thing. And so that's why I say that is just, I would like to take a shot at a guy with high upside. I mean, there's guys we've talked about. There's Crawford from Auburn. There's Barham from Michigan. There's Lawrence from UCF. There's guys that have a ton of upside, but probably aren't finished enough products to be able to help you year one, because that's just not what this draft class is.
Yeah. And I guess I'm just anticipating you're going to need a little more help because we had to cobble it together last year through that very means. We weren't living on the team.
Any position other than running back where you can just slap Band-Aids on it. I mean, who's proven that more than Mike McDonald over the last 5 years? I mean, what he was 100%. Able to get out of Van Noy and Clowney in Baltimore, and even Brent Urban, like he gets, and Malik Harrison, like he gets the most out of these guys because of his system. And so, I trust him to make the right decisions no matter which direction they go.
Which route are you on, Mookie, with that? Are you about going high and going to develop, or you want to go with the two certainties there?
If we're talking about this year, then they could end up signing a veteran. That could be Vaughn. It could be Clowney. It could be Van Noy. Kind of somebody in that. I was hoping it would be Khalil Mack, but at that price.
But I'm asking, which way would you want to go? Do you want to go with the two vet?
I still want Arnold Ebiketie, and I can't believe he's still on the market.
I would prefer the upside, the younger. I always like to unless it's like a surefire thing, I prefer to have that upside there. So Ebiketie is a draft crush of mine from way back. What was it, 2022? I think I had him in the mock draft when they were picking 40 and 41. I had Ebiketie as one of those guys.
So did the Seahawks.
Yeah, and he wasn't. It didn't really pan out for him at Atlanta. But on a defense like Seattle's, with Mike McDonald as his coach, I think they could unlock some of that potential that made him such a high prospect. But ultimately, in lieu of a free agent like Ebiketie, I'd still would like a pass rusher early on, just for that long-term play. But you're right. Draft picks at edge rusher after, like, say, the top 20 or so, that productivity, it's sort of like offensive line, where the later you go with offensive line, the less likely that they're going to be able to that learning curve, that development curve just takes longer. And in some cases, they don't pan out. So that's kind of the risk that you have there. And guys, like I know in the comments are talking about like Nick Benito and Crosby and other guys who've been in the third, fourth, fifth round. Those tend to be the exceptions to the rule, not something that you're going to be chasing. And this is not a deep edge class in terms of like day one, going to be getting 25, 30 snaps a game type of guys.
Agreed. Different drafts, different strengths. Those are drafts that also probably point to a little bit even stronger potential off the edge in what you're getting. So further edges drop deeper into the draft in their availability. Or even guys like Crosby, where it's like part of the reason he didn't go higher was because he had the drug problems coming out of college that the teams were fully well aware with, and that caused him to dip through the draft, where there's really not that guy in this draft. There's some good players, but I think they're more akin to what I saw, which is that I did research on this. Players taken inside the second, third round in the last 10 years, 4 sacks is the highest mark you're going to get in the rookie year of all of those edges taken collectively over a 10-year period. That's pretty stark data to me if you're looking to get some returns from those guys taken at that point, or expecting you're going to get returns, as opposed to we have to wait on it a while. Going to have to give them 2 years maybe by the third year, maybe even sometimes by the fourth year. Guys like Shaquille Barrett, who was with the Broncos, and it took to him finally getting over there to Tampa Bay. These edge rushers can take some time to get it all figured out. And I just don't want to have to do that right now. It's like getting the quarterback with Darnold already outdone and out the chute. Give me the finished product and let's go. If the team was in a different place, I'd be in a different place, but I don't know. Sloby1, thank you for the $2 donation. And I really want to thank all of you guys for all the donos on all of our sides here today. He says, like the stream, you filthy animals.
You can't handle the truth.
And indeed, please do hit that like button for me. Go Hawks as well, Sloby1 as well. As if you're over here on my side, please do get up over there to Seahawks Forever here on YouTube. That's Dan Vien's channel. If you're not already subbed, you should be already. But do get subbed up over there. We got Bryce Coots, who just left us a little while ago, but he got the Hawks Eye here on YouTube, the Hawks Eye. So please do sub up and then you got to be following Field Goals. You know, he's keeping journalism alive, bit by bit, brick by brick. Mookie's over there getting it done over there with fieldgoals.com. So be following over there. They're going to keep you up to date on everything going on. They're never going to let anything slip through the cracks over there on that side. You want to be following and monitor them, seeing what's going on because they're going to keep you up on it. Timeless is Field Goals as well. Any kind of final thoughts here as we go through, guys? Any things that we didn't maybe cover today you guys want to touch upon?
Yeah, I have a final thought. I just saw a fantastic tweet that I'd like to pass on. Has nothing to do with anything that we've talked about tonight. But somebody tweeted, what if JJ McCarthy beats out Kyler Murray in a QB battle in Minnesota? Kyler Murray signing a 1-year deal today, obviously, in Minnesota. To which somebody quote tweeted it, what if Ava Mendez dumps Ryan Gosling for me? I appreciate a good tweet, and that is high.
That's good. I like that. That is very good.
Yeah.
I really wanted to quickly, if I can, I got one person here in the chat says, Mafe was so much better than 2 sacks. He's also 1/4 our pass rush. Well, I think he got more total snaps at the end of the day than just a typical 4th edge rusher with how he was utilized.
And he's
you did have the injury
rush. Byron Murphy had 9 sacks. Leonard Williams is part of our pass rush. He's an interior defensive lineman. Jaron Reed had some sacks. So I get what he's saying, though. It's 1/4 of our edge sack production.
Yeah, that's where, though, I go, it's like he's got 559 snaps on the year. So, you know, he had 3, and by far the majority of those snaps were as a pass rusher. So he had only 178 of those snaps as a run defender. 340 of those snaps were as a pass rusher. They literally put him in a position to succeed, literally put him in a position to pin his ears back. You're playing from ahead in most of these games. So a lot of times you're able to just almost all but just ignore the run, and yet you still only come out with that pass rush productivity. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but we're talking $20 million a year here.
And there's still some upside left to be tapped there. I think we've gotten so much into the analytics and the advanced stats that we forget about the eye test. And at the end of the day, like, ask yourself as a Seahawks fan, how often did you watch a game and forget that Boye Mafe was a Seahawk? And forget that he was on the roster, where he's just not making impact plays. He's not making big play. DeMarcus Lawrence came in 1 year and had more impact, game-winning, impacting plays in 1 season with us at the age of 32 than Boye Mafe had in his entire career. Strip sacks and fumble recoveries and touchdowns. He just never got to that point for me. And so, look, a rotational edge that gets pressure on a consistent basis but doesn't turn that into sack production, cool. Not $20 million a year, though.
No,
not $10 million a year.
No,
I'm not paying $10 million a year for that.
No, he's a fine player. Cincinnati had to rebuild their defensive line, and that's why they signed Jonathan Allen. After Minnesota let him go, because that line stinks. The whole defense is bad, so they probably were panicked into overpaying because they whiff on so many of their draft picks. That Shamar Stewart pick is about 1 more year away from being as bad as people thought it would be. But in terms of the edge rushing thing, Mafe was in a position to succeed in part because of DeMarcus Lawrence being on the team, because what to me gives it all away is how much less Mafe was playing when Lawrence arrived. It meant that Lawrence played more, Chenna was healthy, Chenna plays more, meant Mafe plays less. And of course, Derek Hall played his usual set of snaps. So Mafe, he was in a queue where there are 3 guys who were better than him. And even in the games that Seattle struggled to have a pass rush, like against the Rams, when you look at the guys who were getting pressure, it was pretty much the other 3 and not Mafe. So, I mean, that's kind of my read on Boye, where he had his flashes like in the previous 2 seasons, but he's not a consistent enough player. Even like looking at the sacks, so he had 8 sacks at one point 2 years ago and a streak of 4 or 5 straight games with a sack. But then he would just have these long stretches of disappearing. So that's not a guy I would want to pay top dollar for. Whereas I'm more bullish on Derek Hall being better than the 2 sacks showed.
Yeah. And Seal, man, I get what you're saying. That was my response to the guy saying anybody 3 sacks better than Mafe. I certainly think that he's better than the 2 sacks as far as he's giving you all around solid play. He's a plus as a run defender. When it comes to Mafe, I do think that it's not a bad player. It's just, it does come down to really as much we're measuring the contract. And that's where the reality meets the road at that point when you get beyond that rookie deal and really starts to carry things. Dogzilla, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, instead of JSN money, maybe into the trenches. I've heard some people turning this over, guys. This has been turning over to my chat a little bit. The thought of paying $40 million a year to JSN, where people were like, well, maybe we can max the value out.
Nope. You pay for great players. You pay whatever the market bears for great players. They elevate your team. JSN's a great player. I don't care how much he costs. You make it work.
Darnold has time all day to throw 5-6 seconds in the pocket, but nobody's getting open. He's scrambling, and he's got to throw it away.
Oh, he goes down and he's injured.
Yes, there's a nice preview of what an offense looks like without Jackson Smith and Jigba. I don't want us to be in a spot where paying elite players top dollar. We're pretty much outside the running back position, I guess.
And then you know what happens 2 years later? 2 years later, we're doing an episode of Seahawks Syndicate. We're getting ready for free agency in the draft, and everyone's like, we need to go get this guy. We need to draft wide receiver in the first round. We need to spend $40 million on a receiver. What was the conversation 2 years ago, you guys, among all of us? Lack of blue chip talent on the roster. That's what separated us. Even though we were winning 9 and 10 games a year, that's what separated us from the Rams and the 49ers. Blue chip players. Now we have them. We have to keep them.
Yes, because you know what happens when you don't keep them? You have to keep winning in the draft. And even the absolute best GMs of all time do not have 100% hit rate every single draft.
Right.
I'm sure it's great when you're doing your fantasy GMing and all these guys are future all pros in your head, where you simulate them on Madden. But in the real world, like you're going to have a stinker or two or guys who don't pan out, which is why the Titans did an amazing job replacing A.J. Brown with the guy who's currently with the Commanders on a second chance contract.
And that's how you end up being where the 49ers are today. You take a Ricky Pearsall in the first round when you take Pearsall in a great offensive tackle draft where they absolutely should have addressed their offensive line, largely punted on it. They took Dominic Pooney in the third round that year. Pearsall was a terrible choice in the first round, but you end up forcing that because you don't have that guy. I don't like that thought at all.
Yeah, I can't get with it either. He's 24 years old. He's got we're going to get right through the heart of his prime as a wide receiver. He's a difference maker, as has been noted above. And I think unlike a guy like Puka Nacua, who I think's body's going to break down really quickly after they pay him that contract. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if he has a major injury almost immediately after that. I think you're going to have a lot more longevity here with JSN that'll make this well worth the while to do it.
Mm-hmm.
One more dono here from Josh DeHuman. Thank you for the $2 donation. Says, I like Singleton, Price, and Allen in this draft.
Yeah, I really dig the two guys from Penn State. I can't remember which one of them got hurt at the Senior Bowl. Was it Singleton?
Singleton, yeah, broke his foot.
Yeah, and like that's a good 1-2 punch. Somebody said Noah Whittington from Oregon. I think he'd be a day 3 pick. But for those other 3, they're going to be higher up in the draft, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, probably what, Brad Dan? We got probably maybe second on Price, probably third on Allen, and probably fifth with late 4th to 5th with Singleton.
I think probably that's about right. And then somewhere on day 2, Mike Washington and Emmett Johnson enter the conversation. And then there's always a surprise. But those are kind of the 6 that I like right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but those guys are solid. I think all of those guys would be potential fits into this offense and being able to work the outside zone system, Josh. So solid. I too like Mookie, like both the Penn State guys. I'm a little bit more in preference to K-Tron.
I knew I was forgetting someone too. Yeah, I think we're all Jonah Coleman fans. I
am. What's he running on 40 wise, Dan? What's he running the 40?
He's day 3. Well, yeah, he's not going to run one. But there's a reason for that. He's a 4.6 guy. And he's got 600 touches at the college level. That concerns me a little bit. That's why I think he'll be there on day 3. So, maybe
he's not running on pro day. Is he injured?
No, I just don't think he's going to run 40. I just think he's going to be. I think these guys are smart now. Like, there's a reason Peter Woods didn't run a 40 today.
I mean, Scatabo did last year with these same kind of questions. He eventually had to step up because I would have thought if there would have been a guy like last year that would have avoided it with the tapes good enough, it would have been Scatabo. And that's what happened to Scat is he went 4.65 and it was like
I'll have him.
I go
on a concrete parking lot that's got slight slant to it.
He's going to the Ohio State camp. He's like, I know I didn't go here, but you guys, you're tracked. It's just chef's kiss. It's too good.
Fast fields. There are going to be some people going, yeah, can we hold this pro day somewhere else that's a little more advantageous?
But also, if I'm his agent, I'm telling him not to run at 40 because I think his play style, his build, everything else, I don't think he needs to. Like, if you're sitting there in the 5th round and Jonah Coleman's still available and the Seahawks have traded down or up or whatever, they have a 5th round pick, are you thinking about his 40 time or are you just taking him? Like, I think he's at a certain point, you reach the value where it's like the tape is the tape. And I don't care.
I think you're right. I think that there's teams that will turn around maybe him being a 3rd round pick if the 40 was right. And that the touches are one thing, but if they knew that he was running, let's say low 4.5-ish versus 4.6-ish, I think that would make a pretty decent difference on where he would be taken.
At their pro day, which do I have it on my schedule? Oh, it's the 16th. So 4 days from now, if he even lines up to do his 40, then there's a pretty good chance he's going to break 4.6 because he wouldn't run it if he didn't think he was going to.
I would think you're right about that. And by the way, Carnell Tate's going to go 4.4 in that Ohio State track. You guys watch.
They'll fix that.
Watch.
Yeah. Another guy.
Am I telling no lies, Dan? You've been around on this. You've seen this before, right?
Another player that it doesn't matter. Like, I don't care.
I don't care either. It's just that track is incredible for some of the times that get juiced up for those Ohio State players, and everybody falls for it every year. I don't know what the track's made of. If they got down, they turn on a fan on their back or something. One of those big fans they can turn on. And help them out.
If any fan were to come to me between now and the draft and say, I don't want Jonah Coleman, he's a 4.6 guy, then my immediate follow-up question to them would be, how do you feel about Ken McIntosh?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing is the burst side.
Right.
Because it's one thing if you're 4.6, but it's another thing if you're a 1.59, 1.6 guy.
Right.
Because you do need the burst in this offense to get to the outside zone.
Right.
It's not that you need to necessarily be blazingly fast, but you need the burst. And that's why I want to see him test, is because I want to see that in Jonah where you're at. Because if you're 1.6 and you're 4.6, it's going to be hard to make that work outside of anything but an inside runner at the next level. And
to tie it back into our conversation earlier about positional value and second contracts and all of that, not paying big money to running backs. I said I was concerned about the mileage on his tires, right? And the 600 touches in college. But if you're only looking at a guy for one contract, that doesn't matter.
Yeah. I don't matter. I don't care about that. That's because you're right. 100% on this. I'm looking just that lens. I'm going to hard line it. Mm-hmm. The second I get to the end of it, I will pivot to look at even a trade. If he's going to hard line me, if I can get the 4th year out of him, I'll move him then. I'll offload those assets back. The Kenneth Walker trade, we're going to probably get a 4th compensatory back at least. We're getting something back in return. It ain't for nothing.
Yeah.
I'll keep playing that game all day long. All day long, I'll lean into that. So I think it's a smart move. I think that's the market opportunity here, is not the paying in which other teams are willing to do. Then the other teams that are not willing to go high in the draft for running backs because they're trying to do the full analytical, just get by with a bunch of scrub stuff. So you kind of parse the difference on this one. I think that's the smart way to go.
I'm going to take that a step further. I think when it comes to roster construction, sometimes, tell me if you guys get this kind of kickback too. I get a lot of, like, we're here. I've heard this over the last 48 hours where we just paid Rashid Shaheed too much money because Cooper Kupp's making $15 million and you're about to give JSN 40. Well, you've already talked about how that staggers. And so when you look at the big picture, it really doesn't matter because Kupp probably comes off the books in 2027. But I'll take it a step further. You have your entire running back room is on dirt cheap contracts, most of them on rookie deals. Your entire tight end room is on rookie deals. There are other position groups on this roster that you're not paying market price to, and you don't have an expensive player at. So that savings, to me, it just doesn't matter. You can't say, well, you can't pay 2 edges $20 million. You can't pay 2 receivers big money. You can if you're saving money elsewhere.
It's a great point, man. And I'd add on top of it, only one safety at a devalued position on the back end that you're paying good money to, going cheap the other way. Only one inside off-ball linebacker being paid decent money while the other guy's fairly cheap. And even he's not that expensive versus some of the other big money deals out there given to Mike linebackers. So on those
at the moment too. So
yeah. So I mean, you're right. You do that.
Your interior offensive line, where teams are paying $27 to $30 million for guards and centers now. Your entire interior offensive line is on rookie deals. That's another example.
Yep.
There we go.
A lot of fans want all pro level talent across every position, but they also want a bargain hunt at the same time. Like, no, you can't do both. Otherwise,
no. And if it was that easy, we'd all be GMs.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. The mock drafts would be for real.
Mm-hmm.
Sean McLeodart, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, just got back. You guys talk about the Bryce Huff retirement? We haven't as of yet.
No.
A little surprising, I guess.
7 years old. I just, what is it about the 49ers and players retiring young?
Must not make substation joke. Must not make substation joke. Must not make substation joke.
To do with that, right? And I found it fascinating. I can't even think about it on the top of my head, though. Like he's starting some company, or he has started some company.
Yeah, a weird business too.
Such a specialized, it's such a specific, narrow field, but he's going all in on it. You have to admire that.
Yeah, if it means his body takes less of a beating at that age, he got a significant contract, I think, from Philadelphia that, it may not have played out there, but you know what? He is a Super Bowl champion. He might have been a healthy scratch in the Super Bowl and not what Philadelphia expected when he came over from the Jets, but he got some of a bag and he's got a ring, which the 49ers haven't had in 30 years. So that one Niner fan in the chat can keep harping on about Seattle's fall off. We can just keep posting the scoreboard at Levi Stadium from February 8th.
So here it is. It's not even a sure thing. He's in the process of founding a company called NeighborStorm, and it's lithium ion batteries power the modern world, but they carry a fire risk that current suppression technology was never designed. So he's building fire suppression infrastructure to help combat lithium ion battery fires.
So random. It's like for a football player that's been in the league for years, signed in it. Yeah, it's like, okay. All right. Memphis degree going to work. You're interesting. This thing with Bryce Young, by the way, guys, though, from a Niner perspective, 2026, 3 million, 2027, 3 million, 2028, 3 million, 2029, 3 million, 2030, 3 million. Those are the void year money left on the Bryce Young deal.
Wow.
The Bryce Huff.
Bryce Huff. Yeah. But and then from his side of the coin, he can afford to go start up a fledgling.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you retire? It's all in void years. It's all in void. I'm on last year. It's all been voided out. I'm done, bro. And I'd be the same way.
He's 27 years old and he's pocketed $41 million in his career.
Yeah. Well, what's left to ponder
after tax, right? After taxes.
But the Niners, again, we talked earlier in the show about them being on the fence and pick a lane and which side you want to go on. There's no way I would have signed up for this Bryce Huff contract. No way. $3 million of void year money through 2030?
Yeah.
Are you high?
Yeah.
You know how he was laughing his ass off when that
I can't believe. And please, these teams, don't let Howie off the hook with this thing. Don't do this. Don't let him off with this. He's buried all this void crap. And now the team's going to start to AJ Brown. We'll take the void year with AJ. And it's going to be wild if he's able to pull this off with a couple of other different players for how he set this up. But don't do it, teams. Please make him feel that.
I just looked at it the other day. So the Philadelphia Eagles have dead money on their cap through the year 2035. They have void years on their rolls through the year 2035. And in 2034, they have multiple players. It's insane.
That's 9 years out. That's 9 years out of dead money. You just go, whoa. You're going to face that at some point. But again, you let them off the hook on these kind of contracts where they're significant, $14 million, $14.6 million of bonus money left on the books over the preceding next 4 years for a rental player. Like, what are the Niners doing? What are they doing? It's not that it's bad. It's just none of it doesn't make sense when you put it all together. It's like a building you're cobbling together with different bricks.
Imagine what it's like to be a 49er fan right now when you had to live through last offseason where you watch them just let guys walk out the door, the Greenlaws and the Hufungas and everybody else, and then they didn't aggressively replace them. And then they came out and said publicly, we need to get our cash spending in line. So then the expectation as a fan, you have to live through that season and stars dropping like flies. And you see your team wins 12 games and they're so close, even with a skeleton crew of a roster. And so you're like, okay, we got through that. That's in the rear view. Another offseason. Here we go. And what are we seeing now? Reports that they're still trying to control and cap their spending. And that's why they're not being more aggressive. They're in a weird place right now.
Mm-hmm.
Not pretty.
The schedule gets harder in theory for everybody in the NFC West next season. No more playing the bottom feeders and eating up on those teams anymore.
Like, I just wonder, you look at the 49ers and if you just showed kind of a blind resume situation, right? And like, this is what their cap situation looks like moving forward. This is their average age of their roster. These are some of their roster needs. You would think, well, I don't know who that team is, but they need to rebuild. But because of their culture and their history and everything else, they probably just can't convince themselves that's the right thing to do.
Funnily enough, if Garoppolo never gets hurt and Purdy never even sees the field that year, they would have probably been in rebuild mode already. Yeah. But instead, like, there's kind of difference between Lynch and Snead. Like, Snead is willing to, there's some years where he's willing to be in F them picks mode and take these huge swings. And then they sign these ridiculous contracts, and it always seems to work out for them in a way that for San Francisco, they always like they're hemming and hawing and hemming and hawing. And don't get me wrong, they've won a lot of games, and they've been a couple Super Bowls, but at some point the bottom's probably going to fall out for them. Whereas with the Rams, if the bottom falls out, it's more like Stafford gets old, but the rest of the roster is still very good. The 49ers, the worry is the roster is going to decay, and like Bosa's never going to be the same. Kittle's going to decline, and McCaffrey, of course. And there's so many pieces that they have to fill that it's going to take a lot of draft success to fix all that.
Have you guys looked at their cap situation for the next 4 years recently?
Well, they're already 40. They had $100 million last year, which was supposed to free them up. Yet they're already $40 million in before the Trent Williams decision comes down the line.
They're essentially, when you consider effective cap space, right, and draft picks and practice squad and all that, they're essentially at zero right now. They have about $15 million left, and that's usually about between 10 and 15 is how much teams like to hold so they can pay for that stuff and have a little bit at the trade deadline. They're over the cap for 2027 by 14 million. And in 2028, they only have 50 million in cap space 2 years from now. And then, oh, by the way, in 2029, they're $182 million over the salary cap. If they don't win in 2026, I don't think they have a choice.
And well, to your point on the 2028, which you said 50 million, I don't think that even captured it fully, because not only do they only have 50 million in 2028, that's the 32nd team in the NFL as far as their available cap space goes. And the next team above them, being the Bills, has $50 million more of cap space at the 31st level of things.
And they'll do
just
the
to put that in
thing and the Saints thing and the Cowboys thing, and they'll just, like Brock Purdy 2020.
Maybe
Brock Purdy.
Maybe they
$8 million. They're just going to have to keep kicking that and doing salary to bonus restructures and kicking it all down the road. And this is what happens when you don't draft well. It stacks up to the point that you end up right here.
Yeah,
I would offer, though, too, on top of it. So really quick, Mookie, with this, I'd say, though, it's a combination. It's that, and that you decide you have to reward everybody. That nobody has a tough decision put on their back.
No.
That everybody gets paid, even if it's to a third contract, even if it's to a guy that's at the end of, it's not going to be as healthy going forward, that you don't make any tough decisions. That Brandon Ayuk contract, they didn't want to give. They had a trade. Yeah, that was the decision. That's the thing. You don't have to make it all over the place,
right?
But you do have to tactically make a choice at some point or another to bleed a little bit. You don't get to just take it all. It doesn't work, or you're going to run into this kind of situation. This is why we're saying, Seattle, be patient, because this is what you run into. And so they would never make that choice. They gave even Kyle Juszczyk, they gave another deal to last year. They can't make a tough choice on anybody. They gave Kittle last year an extension when they should have moved him last year before the start of the year. They could have gotten probably a second round pick back in return. They had a trade on the table. They said, no, we'll give him another extension at 31. This is bad management. This is what's going to lead to them having that turnaround you just talked about, Dan.
And when they cut him, and they haven't yet, because they're hoping somebody will come along and trade for him, which they won't. If they cut him, this is a great example. It will actually cost them cap space. It's $29.5 million in dead money, and they lose $15 million off the cap. So there you are. Now you're at zero. Now you're having to make another move just to pay for draft picks and practice squad and all of that. It's I don't know if they don't win the division. I don't know if John Lynch survives 2026.
I don't either.
Yeah, it's a little shakier for him. Like Snead, I think, is fine. I think there's a great comment here by Euler Titan 7913. I thought from 2019 to 2024, the Niners are the most talented team in the NFC, but a middling quarterback. So I would say Purdy is a fair bit better than Garoppolo, and Purdy at his best is way better than Garoppolo, whereas Purdy at his worst is kind of just like a normal Jimmy G game. But right now, I think they got a better quarterback situation in terms of Purdy being better than Garoppolo, but he's way more expensive. But the rest of the roster is not as strong as it once was. And that goes back to the drafting. And boy, have they missed so many receiver picks. Like, I think they waited too long to trade Debo, and they got, a pretty
There's another one.
Now they're going to probably cut Ayuk, or if he's going to get traded somehow, some way, there's not going to be a lot of value there. Pearsall, the idea of Pearsall versus what he's actually been, he's been injured a lot. He's obviously had a life-threatening sort of situation to start his rookie year, but still, like, jury's still out on Pearsall on the field. But the Danny Grays of the world, Jacob Cowens, those dudes aren't contributing. They're whipped at receiver way too many times. That's why they've had to, and even a running back. Like, how many times did they spend 3rd and 4th round picks on running backs? Davis Price, the Williams dude from Utah, and none of those guys panned out, which is why they ended up trading for McCaffrey. And it's worked out brilliantly for them because McCaffrey's meant so much. But also they wouldn't have had the need for McCaffrey if they had been able to hit on their running back pick sooner. And that's been a consistent problem for them, where the positions that Shanahan and Lynch covet, those have been the areas where they have struggled historically to draft well.
And I want everyone to know, we did not have it on our notes to each other in prepping for the show to spend a whole segment bashing on the 49ers. It's just kind of organic.
We just do this for fun.
Yeah, we just do it for fun. But now I've pulled up on Pro Football Reference. I pulled up their draft history. It's worse than I thought it was off the top of my head. I mean, you look at, this is why these two franchises are where they are. The 49ers, one of the oldest in the league, and the Seahawks, one of the youngest. Seahawks coming off a Super Bowl win, and the 49ers kind of trying to figure out where they're at. You look back through 22, 23, 24, 25. You want to compare their drafts to the Seahawks? It's night and day. Like, even just going back to 24, and you think, okay, maybe there's 3 or 4 guys that are still going to pop. Pearsall, Renardo Green, who's fine. He's a decent corner. Dominic Pooney, decent right guard. Malik Mustafa, I had a 49ers guy today tell me, not good. Isaac Guerrero is your 4th running back. Jacob Cowing, Jarrett Kingston, Tatum Bethune. You go back to 2023, Jair Brown, Jake Moody was their 2nd pick. Cameron Latou, Darrell Luter, Robert Beal. These are guys I couldn't even name if you paid me $1,000 or $1 million to try and name recent draft picks off the 49ers. It's remarkable how bad it's been.
Latou was a 3rd rounder too. They had all those compensatory picks that they got off the minority hires for coaching, and they blew all of them.
And they cut him. So like Latou is already gone. And
yeah, he's already gone. They're eating dead money on that. That's one of their dead money deals that they've been eating on. Even though it's a couple $100,000, it's still just
Jackson
like.
Was their first pick in 22. You mentioned Danny Gray, Spencer Butte. Yeah, they've missed on so much.
Yeah, and
a lot of these picks too in the moment are overdrafts. Pearsall was an overdraft.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Mookie. What?
I was going to say Michigan, they had Ronnie Bell too. Like, maybe, I know there's the whole thing, don't scout the helmet. The number of Michigan receivers, and we should know it from the Amara Darboh pick.
Amara Darboh.
Michigan receivers who completely bomb out in the NFL is staggering. They are like the anti-wide receiver you. They are Ohio State's opposite or LSU's opposite with how bad those picks have been. Like, Braylon Edwards is probably the best Michigan receiver the last 20-something years. And after that, it's like the Donovan Peoples-Joneses, the Darbohs, as I mentioned, Ronnie Bell, Roman Wilson has barely done anything for Pittsburgh. Like, those dudes don't go high in the draft for a reason.
Yeah. Well, even like your Braylon Edwards example, for the other guy you have that's like Braylon Edwards, they don't even last long when they are good. So like Nico Collins, like he was good there for about a year and a half, and it kind of feels like now I know injuries is a big part of this, but kind of seems like he's about to go that same quiet way that sort of Braylon did with having a nice start to his career, and it's kind of quieting down a little bit. So I would avoid receiver. Hey, those are tight. Michigan tight ends are nice. Yeah. It's like Baylor wide receivers. I don't like going after Baylor wide receivers either in general terms. Or Clemson defensive players. I've got some built-in prejudices here that I've got to admit.
God,
but
you're not
they're
wrong,
held true.
Though. I'm just looking at all the Michigan wide receivers that have been drafted, and it's like David Terrell, Amani Toomer had a decent run. Devin Funchess. Roman,
is he a tight end? Is he a receiver?
Roman Wilson, Amara Darboh's there, and there was a kid I was looking for, really, really athletic. That Donovan Peoples-Jones, that was the guy that I was thinking about that Cleveland drafted in 2020. Yeah, none of these guys. Ty Streets, like they just all. It's crazy.
Not good. It's a little rough. Nicholas Newton, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, all right, fellas, who we taking with our first pick?
As we sit here today, if I was betting and I had to pick one, Chris Johnson.
We didn't bring it up, but we were starting to get the 30 visits rolling in. Because of course we're not going to be here every week. Like we're going to pick and choose in the off season. But like there was a dude from Toledo, whose name I'm forgetting, and Chris Johnson are two confirmed 30 visits for the Seahawks. Like they're going to take a corner, I am pretty sure. Whether it's Cisse from South Carolina or Chris Johnson, and Johnson ends up being one of those combine standouts, who I think could be that option. Cisse, I think, is also a viable choice for the Seahawks. I think they're going to take a corner early, whether at 32 or 64. But since we're talking about the first pick, I think they take a corner, and it's not going to be like Kelly Jennings the last time they took a corner that late in the first round.
Let's hope not. And yeah, Andre Fuller from Toledo is the kid that is the other 30 visit, and that sent me kind of scrambling to the tape because I hadn't studied him yet. He's probably day 3, but he's an interesting dude. But Johnson's just one of those guys that he fits a need. He's got the athletic profile, the play style, the versatility, but he's also he turned down NIL money to stay at San Diego State. He's got the personality, and he just seems to be wired the way that Seahawks, want their guys to be wired when they're drafting him in the first round. So that's why right now, as we sit here today, he's a guy that I would bet money on.
Somebody said
I think those are as good options as I go with, Nicholas. I'd offer in maybe a Jennings Dunker as an outlier out there, but a cornerback is the leader in the clubhouse right now.
Yep.
As far as it stands, it makes a lot of sense for the value to line up to Seattle picking at 32. And the thing we know about John is he's going to operate out of value in day 1 and day 2 at this point. So makes a ton of sense.
Here's why I think corner is going to be the pick at 32 also, because, and tell me if you feel the same way, Brandon. I know you've had your board built for quite a while. There's a clump of corners that look to possibly be available at 32. And to me, it's remarkable how similar they all are. When you start talking about, there's kind of 4. There's Chris Johnson, there's Brandon Cisse, there's Avion Terrell, and there's Colton Hood. Same size, right? They're all 6 foot 190. They all kind of they have similar movement skills. Their combine testing was all very similar. It's kind of eerie, but it's also good for a team that needs a corner because you have options.
Yeah, most of them are also fluid with the press man to off coverage and then falling into zone. Like they're very comfortable doing both, which is unusual. Most corners kind of have they have a preference on which they do better. They're all equal in that there's not a lot of ball skills there. That's the lack of the high ceiling on them. These aren't guys who can get 5, 6, 7 interceptions for you a year, but maybe like 2. But then they all play really good run defense and tackle really well for the most part in addition to that. And so you're at least getting a fairly high floor, ready-made to go player at that position. And when you do look at it, there's a stack of about 7 guys I've got first and second round grades on to be right there would be right for us to pick. But you could see 4 guys go off in the first round, and then you could see another 3 or 4 guys go before we get back to that second round pick at the end of the second round. And this would make sense as to why we get to the corner being that pick at 32, because John knows I'm not going to get the same kind of player at 64 when we pick back there. So I think all roads do kind of lead to this being where it's leaning to right now. Yeah. I think Jadarian Price does make sense, but you go back 13 picks if you do that, Dan. You go get it a 4th round pick back in return. Yeah. You still are able to get Jadarian there, and then you at least get an extra pick on that side of it.
And there's a couple of deals there that I do on a pretty regular basis. Moving back to 39 with the Browns is like a perfect match on the trade charts. You get 107. You could even get they have multiple 7ths. You could tack one on there if you want to as well, get a special teams guy or whatever. But there's some, we'll see how willing teams are to move up in this draft, given, the nature of the class. But there's some opportunities there to move back. I think Houston's another one where there's a really even match there to move back and pick up like another sort of early 4th. So
especially if we can get that wonderful faller in there at 32. That one guy that's like, how is this guy here still? And it's not really a need, not really something we want, but like somebody's like, oh,
right. And usually a guy that falls like that comes at a position where fans don't think there's a need. Like today, as we sit here today, like Peter Woods is falling. Right. I've seen him fall into the 20s on some boards. Caleb Banks is having a 2nd foot surgery. Like there's some interesting dudes that are probably based on talent and production alone, top 10, top 15 picks in this draft that seem to be falling. So that happens every year. We'll see how that goes.
It was Andre Fuller, by the way, who had a meeting with the Seahawks reportedly, or 30 visits.
And his tape's kind of fun.
And the visits are true, by the way. I've done this as an exercise. Last year, 3 of our top 30 visits became Seattle Seahawks. So when you visit these guys in, it's not just them doing smoke screen or to try to throw people off the scent when it comes to the draft. Yeah. It does denote true interest in the player.
Yep, absolutely.
Peter Go Hawks, thank you for the $5 donation, Peter. For all three of you guys, what's the biggest pick the Seahawks making free agency, and who do you want for the first 3 picks in the draft? Go Hawks. What's the biggest pick he's asking what's been the best signing essentially?
Or is it someone that we think is left?
Or some interesting question.
Biggest pick the Seahawks made in free agency. Maybe it's an autocorrect thing.
I mean, if it's the biggest pick we've made, I think the Emmanuel Wilson one was the one that made me kind of exhale a little bit and just go, okay, if we had to play a game this weekend, like that's kind of where I wanted one more reinforcement. But if he's talking about someone that's still out there, like I'm going to be on the Arnold Ebiketie train until somebody else signs him. And I don't care if it costs us a 5th round comp pick. I think there's that kind of upside, obviously depending on price, but you would imagine after 4 days of free agency having gone by that he's not going to be that expensive.
Moogie?
I think that the re-signing of Shaheed made me a lot more at ease because it doesn't mean now they have 2 skill position holes to deal with on offense. Like I don't want it to be a risk of the offense taking a step back. At the same time, the defense could take even the slightest of step backs because of who they lost. It's like, okay, fine. Let's say the defense is instead first in DVOA and all the advanced metrics, they're second or third because the guys that were brought in to replace the guys they lost, Reed, Kobe, Mafe, not immediately successful. That's still an elite defense you can win with. But if the offense takes doesn't make the advancements we hope, that's going to reduce the chances of being able to repeat. So I think that the Shaheed sign is great. I'll give you a sneaky one. Re-signing Josh Jones has really put my mind at ease because you already have Cable Dew in Richmond. So you got your young guys, developmental guys who could maybe find their way into the starting lineup over Bradford essentially because like the other 4 spots are fine. But Josh Jones means I don't have to worry about swing tackle. Like you've got him and you've got Amari Kite too. Like I think Amari Kite could develop into kind of Josh Jones's successor if such a thing can happen at swing tackle. In terms of who I want first 3 picks in the draft, I don't know who, like I won't name names for the time being, but for positions, if I had to take one position only, maybe in this order, cornerback, running back, and edge. So cornerback first, running back in the second, and then edge a little later on. That's kind of my early feeling. Like edge, who's not going to be like one of the top guys in terms of what they will be on the Seahawks roster. Running back, because I think they can start, and cornerback, because I think you need to have a starting level corner to replace Reek Woolen.
And I would go with Rashid Shaheed as well as being my guy on the front. For me, I would go for as far as I'd go value. And so we think we're talking about it. Cornerback seems to be the value, but I would go like this because it's also, he says, who do you want? I take Jennings Dunker at 32. I think he's almost a sub first round talent. I trust in his ability to transition inside. He is going to give us ability to play multiple line spots at once, including be your heir apparent for Bradford. I think it'd be a no-brainer pick. I then would hope to look to find one of those corners remaining in the back end of the 6th round. A Dalen Everett, Chris Johnson, Malik Mohammed, Keith Abney, Devin Moore. One of those guys into the end of the 2nd round, then jump on that and then come back around for a running back then in the 3rd round, if not an edge, depending on where the higher value lies as far as what's on the board. Katron Allen or Damon Claiborne at the running back position there at the end of the 3rd round might not be the worst of picks to go make at that point. So something along those lines from my perspective.
I like that. I think Dunker's the wild card for me. I could see them if they fell in love the way, well, not if, we saw the way they fell in love with Gray Zabel last year, and you used his name. We talked about the Senior Bowl. He's this year's Gray Zabel, and not just because of his play style and his athletic ability, but just kind of his demeanor and all of that stuff. All the things they fell in love with about Zabel last year, they're not going to not fall in love with Dunker either. It's just a matter of how they feel the value falls on their board. So I'd be on board with that. But I pulled up a mock draft that I did this morning. I didn't want to just make this up off the top of my head, just to give you to answer the question fully. And I did it using PFF's board, which I find to be the most aggressive this time of year, where they have guys, I think, rated. How can I word this? They have guys rated too high sometimes, which means that later, if you use their mock draft sim, it's hard to get good talent later. And so that's why I think it's a little more challenging. That's why I like to use their big board. But I did make that trade down with the Browns, so I picked up an extra pick. So I'm going to cheat on your answer. I'm going to give you 4. So at 39, they took Chris Johnson. At 64, I got Derek Moore, the edge out of Michigan, who we all like. And then at 96, I went pure best player available, Anthony Hill Jr. I don't think he's going to be there at 96, but I went forward. To me, he just seemed like a classic Mike McDonald chess piece. You might say, well, but they just re-signed Drake. He's a guy that you would just find a spot for. He can rush off the edge. He has a safety background. He can be kind of a bigger version of Nick Emenwar. You can move him all around. And then I ended up, if you're sitting there thinking, what about running back? Well, then I got 107 from the Browns, and so I took Katron Allen there. So boxes checked.
There we go. I like it, man. Solid run. If we get Anthony Hill in third round, I will be doing handstands on the live stream show.
He's not getting out of the second round, but it was
if he's there, I will be there. Just yeah, I will be a very, very excited man. Peter Go Hawks, thank you for correcting this on the $5 donation. This is the autocorrect thing. It gets everybody, buddy. What was the biggest move you make by the end of free agency? So they grabbed theirs. Arnold Ebiketie, Mookie, yours was.
Well, that was like mine was like they re-signed Shaheed, so they make by the end of free agency.
Yeah, so by the end of free agency, who's one you want to sign that's available on the market?
Yeah, it would essentially be getting Ebiketie or signing a cap casualty corner. Not an endorsement of signing Marlon Humphrey, but I think they're going to sign a corner in free agency.
And I'd be a guy that I'd probably favor a little bit more over an Ebiketie being a Jadeveon Clowney, because I think with Clowney, you can wait past June 1st, so we don't lose the compensatory value. And I think that Jadeveon Clowney is a better overall player than Ebiketie. It becomes about the unrealized potential more than it is about who he actually is as a player right now. And right now it's about souping up this team in 2026 to make them the strongest they can be for 2026, not for a developmental player that maybe 2 years down the line can fully come into bloom. I like Ebiketie, don't get me wrong. It's not a bad answer. It's just that's why my preference would be more for Clowney on that side of it, on top of him being a purified fit for this defense from a physical makeup standpoint.
Well, we'll have to read this in August because that's when Clowney will sign.
Well, probably. Yeah, he's going to wait out. He's done with free agency. Can't blame him. You see how much that guy's earned over his career? He's one of those guys that's been right up there as far as he's played it right. Everybody knocks him too for like, oh, he's getting the 1 year, he's a gun for hire. It's like, yeah, the gun for hire makes $300 million. I think he did a pretty smart job of it.
Yeah. And he produces. He performs.
It performs, man. That's the thing. Is like you can knock him all you want, but he gets the job done in the field, and he's a good all-around player. They're going to try to keep us going here with the donos. Peter, go. Thank you for the $2 donation. Says my dream draft: Dunker 1 in the first, Price in the second, and then edge or cornerback in the third.
Does Peter mean that in the third round he wants someone that can play edge and corner? Because that would be tremendous value. It's a
new unicorn.
Forget
that's the next position everybody's chasing in the sport. But
if
we are wondering what's the next evolution.
Anthony Hill might be able to do that
if he was allowed to. He would try.
Or Nick Emenwar can do that. Nick Emenwar can play edge and corner.
Yeah.
I think you're going to find us all liking these guys, Peter. Dunker's a guy that I think we all can see the vision in and what it could do. I think that the thought process of turning this line into one of the true strengths of this team, which is what you'd be on the road to doing by bringing in Dunker at the right guard position, would just have so many cascading effects that would be so beneficial, on top of a lot more less onus now in how can you get the difference making running back. Because who's ever running behind that offensive line is going to be successful. Who's ever running behind that offensive line is going to find yards.
I'm going to add one more thing to that, Brandon, because I was thinking about this the other day when the Rams were doing what they were doing, and they were, getting McDuffie and they were getting Jalen Watson and bringing back Cam Curl. I thought, okay, well, they just buttoned up their biggest weakness, right? Their Achilles heel. So how do you combat that? And I think a lot of fans would think, well, maybe we add another weapon, another receiver, right? A guy that can get deep and someone to come. No. And maybe this plays into their choice to sign Emmanuel Wilson today. But my immediate thought was, let's go upgrade right guard so that we can run the ball down their throats, because Braden Fisk, and they've got some guys up front that are great at pressuring the passer, but maybe not so good against the run. And maybe when they're zigging, you zag, right? And you try to take that running game to another level to where you can just grind out those 9-minute drives against them, keep the offense off the field, and not have to rely on your drop back passing game. So that's another way you can go about that.
One of the things the analytic folks tell you is that your offensive line and it's how strong it is not based upon the strongest offensive line player. It's based upon how good your weakest link is. Mm-hmm. And right now, our weakest link, we got over it, we got around it, we got a Super Bowl win with it. But if we can eliminate it and have no weak links, or the weak link actually has a somewhat of a strength to it and what they're bringing, I am getting captured by that in my imagination and how hard that is to build in the NFL and how close you are to getting that built right now if you can just add that one more player to cement this down.
And it won't shock me because, we know now, especially in hindsight, looking back, that like Pete Carroll devalued the offensive line. He just wanted resources spent in other areas. I don't think Mike McDonald thinks that way. And I don't think he's going to
No.
stop thinking that way. And you look at, we showed the coaching staff earlier, John Benton's back, Justin Outen. These are guys that are involved in the draft process, and you don't know damn well they're going to be pounding the table saying, look, our defense is going to succeed no matter what. If they don't add another player to that defense, it's going to be a top 10 defense. That's the foundation they have in place, and that's Mike McDonald running the show. Let's go take our one area on offense where we see a clear path to upgrade even further, and let's do that, and that'll give us a competitive advantage. I could see it. I will not be surprised if they go with a player like that early.
So here's your point. They just did their first 2 second contracts for linemen that they drafted for, if I'm not mistaken, the first time in 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that was with Benton on the books. Both the Cross and the Lucas deal got done. So somebody's in there saying something different at this point.
Even the move to bring Josh Jones back, even though it's not a lot of money, but I just think the move to do that is an acknowledgement that, like, I think 5 years ago, they probably just roll with Kite and maybe sign someone off the bargain basement later on, or take a guy in the 7th round and say, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Not now.
Yeah, they extended Britt, but in terms of the tackle, somebody pointed out like the only people they kept from the 2022 class were the trenches, meaning Cross and Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, would you like the alternative where they continue to not extend their guys? It's like they got a lot. They might get 4 comp picks out of that draft class. Plus, you have Cross and Lucas in the long term, or at least these next couple of years. That is a totally fine outcome to me. Where okay, you can't keep everybody from a draft class. They helped you win the Super Bowl, and now you got your foundational tackles. After years of complaining that A, they don't draft offensive linemen early enough, and B, they don't extend the linemen that they have. Well, they drafted Cross early. They drafted Lucas reasonably early, meaning in day 2. And they're both under contract for several years. And in Lucas' case, he's got a pretty affordable deal. So I'm thrilled that they have guys who are here to stay. And of course, you got Zabel for 3 more seasons under his rookie contract, maybe 4 if you exercise his 5th-year option. We have not had this in so long where I could say, the Seahawks don't have to repeatedly change people on the offensive line because they've been doing these 1-year stopgaps on guys who got no future here.
I'll tell you how great it is to not have to worry so much about the offensive line. It's March 12th, and literally this morning, I started diving into all 22 scouting tape of offensive linemen for the first time in this process. I haven't needed this. I haven't had the motivation to scout them because it's just that's where it stands.
Makes sense, man. It makes complete sense. I'm like that with tight ends right now. I've looked at like 2 of them, and I don't think I'm looking for more than that.
Honestly, I think
I think I'm just be like, and this is like one of the deepest tight end classes in years too. So it's hilarious, but I don't care. We're not drafting one. There's 0 chance. So no.
And deep doesn't always mean good either. So.
I know. And well, that's the thing. You have to look at like 21 of them if you're going to start to dive into them this year, because there's so many of them. It's like, I'm good. Yeah. I'm okay. We're fine at tight end. Peter Go Hawks, thank you for another $2 donation. Says, ha, 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 edge 3rd, cornerback 4th. You guys are funny.
Well, you're trading down.
That's
right. 4th. But yeah, you got to make a trade. The 4th was spent on Rashid, and the 5th was spent on Shaheed.
Yeah, so you would have to trade back there for Dunker a little bit and hope you could pick that 4th rounder up and still get Dunker at that point, or Price maybe on your 2nd round pick at that point there, Peter. But no matter what, I like where your head's at. I think you're in the right place as far as what the value will be right in at the top of that draft, more than just the exact players. It's kind of like, well, what's the value going to be right in about where we're going to be picking at? And as these guys have illustrated really well, the cornerback is really where you're probably looking early on. A guy like Dunker could be a market opportunity because everybody makes the run at the tackles. And so a guy like that's probably more of a utility right guard future, can slide down to you and land in your pocket. But I'm okay with all these ways you're looking to go, man. I think that they're all very solid approaches. And Price is I think he's a pretty good floor guy. David Johnson's been my comp for David Price or Jadarian Price. You like that comp?
David Johnson was an underrated back for Arizona.
Yeah.
And like he had the speed and the power. It's just that I think when he fractured his wrists, I don't know, year 4, year 5 of his career, that's when the nosedive started. But like Price's vision is really what impresses me most.
We're all about the rookie contract here with these running backs, Mookie.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we're living, baby.
He's got so much tread left on his tires. So much tread.
He does indeed. He does indeed. Well, folks, if you can do me this favor, no matter where you're watching this video, slam that like button. Again, over Seahawks Forever, Hawks Out with Bryce Coots, Field Goals here with Mookie. Wherever you're at, please do follow, hit the like button, be monitoring these guys on their side of it. Really appreciate the discussion with you guys tonight, guys. It was awesome. We went almost 2 hours and 40 minutes here in the book tonight, so we were cooking it up, but we had a lot to talk about. So
yeah, we did.
Quite a bit to cover here on the show. Any final kind of thoughts or any other things we guys lost that we didn't get to on this?
Let me just check Twitter, see if we missed any signings. I think it's funny this time of year. It always kind of strikes me how, especially being on the East Coast, right? So I get it early. That GMs go to bed and they like to clock out. Even that first day of free agency, it's like after about 5 o'clock Pacific time is like crickets. It's like, I don't know if they universally agree and they go, okay, guys, let's shut it down. We'll reconvene at 8 a.m. But no, this has been fun. I love the Seahawks approach. It's a good time to be talking with y'all about this, with the roster being in the shape it's in. They're just the lack of desperation and panic is just very comforting.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. Go ahead, Mookie. I'm sorry.
I was going to say my last thought is with the way that today went, and part of why we went so long is because the Seahawks actually did a bunch of things that made us have reasons to there were more topics available with all the moves and that they made on announcing the coaching staff, but special teams, and I could tie that into the 70-man roster that Schneider talks about. You re-sign Chris Stoll, so you're fine at long snapper. You re-sign Brady Russell, who's pretty much your special teams captain, and on a multi-year on a 2-year deal when other teams were interested. Apparently, Brandon Peely does play special teams. He might be a run-stuffing nose tackle, but like the first fumble that Seattle forced all season was because of Brandon Peely getting his paws on a ball on a kick return against Washington. So they have kept and you bring back DeAnthony Bell. Rodney Thomas can play on special teams as well. The only guy you're losing is Derek Young in terms of the special teams guys, and the fact that you re-signed Shaheed to a sizable contract. We saw how important special teams was for Seattle last year. We saw how much of a liability it was the year before that. This special teams unit should remain outstanding for 2026. You can tell McDonald values special teams in a way that McVay and Shanahan clearly do not.
It's a great point, man. I love that the Seahawks mean what they say, right? All the slogans and the catchphrases and stuff. It's not just bullshit. And when they say 70 and they started talking about that this year in the Ready Squad, they mean it. Like they're rewarding these guys. They want to bring as many of them back as they can. And that's why, and we can talk about this on future shows, when you start to ask about, what are some possible solutions here going down the road? Well, maybe a guy like Maxon Hook gets into the safety conversation, right? Maybe a guy like Connor O'Toole gets into the pass rush conversation. Maybe Nehemiah Pritchett ends up being that third rotational corner and kind of establishing himself. And the team puts their money where their mouth is, and they back that up with action, and they allow these guys to play. And I think that's the best way to build a team, honestly.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I think Mookie touches on too, the market opportunities you're trying to create where you can gain advantage over your competition because they're leaving a ball off the table. And special teams is one of those places. Depth is another one, as you guys speak to, that we can absolutely say that. We've talked about this with the Niners and our outlook of them, especially where you're looking at them going, you guys are still in this sort of top-heavy mode. You're still chasing the frontline guys to carry everybody else with them up the mountaintop rather than it being the 70 that are all collectively getting out the mountaintop together. And we felt that last year from the team with the Okadas and the Drake Thomases that could come out there, even a Tyrese Knight that could come on the field in a pinch and start for you and not miss a beat. And every team talks that talk. Like you say, Dan, they all talk the talk, but few actually walk the walk in building the supplemental roster that's bolstered by the depth. Most teams, I think, do kind of chase that top end, that frontline starter guy. And Seattle's purposefully gone a different direction with this. Smart for it. Part of the reason you won the Super Bowl last year, right?
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
All right, you folks. Well, thank you again for watching today. Mr. Bill finishing us off with a nice $5 donation. Mr. Bill, very kind of you for doing that. You guys are very kind here for us on the chat. Thank you for all of your support and doing what you guys do. You guys are amazing in that way. We will be back soon with another Syndicate, and I'm seeing some mock requests. We will get a mock up on the next Syndicate, I promise you. Maybe even a couple of scenarios. Maybe if we're feeling even a little funky, we'll throw a couple different mock scenarios at you guys. So yeah, we got to. I'm making the promise for you guys already. How you like that, huh? I'm writing checks for you guys on this. But we will be getting that going back around here when we get back to the next Syndicate. Maybe we get some breaking news inside that time. Maybe a Crosby trade. Dare I dream? Boy, can you imagine how that would break the internet? But who knows? We'll have to step all along. We got as much money as you can play with right now. Got all the cap space. I looked at it too. We didn't talk about it, guys. $500,000. By far the least amount of dead money on the books of any NFL team in the sport.
Nice.
Those two factors are very important, both the cap space and the flexibility. They can do whatever the hell they want. Don't worry, Seahawks fans. Hopefully we've calmed you. They can do whatever the hell they want. We ain't done yet. We're just getting warmed up. So keep the faith. And please, by God, don't you ever forget, don't you dare You keep that faith because we got money to spend, and John, he's got to burn a hole in his wallet. He's going to do it. So keep the faith and don't forget, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.